Chapter 76 You team up with Maki and Finks, you team up with Pakinoda, and you can become a couple to lure that person out. Yes. Captain, there is one more thing I want to say. Knight, who was fiddling with the computer, suddenly spoke. Go ahead. I just got a message that the photos of 7 of us have been exposed. The 10 old men are planning to hire assassins to deal with us, including someone from the Zyod family. Zoldyck? Then let's ask them to deal with the 10 old guys as well, Krilo said lightly, and that nonchalant attitude really made people want to take a bite out of his composure. Okay, I'll place the order right away, said Knight. I am the dividing line for the second day. Knight, I'm going to meet the eldest lady of Nosra today, and I'll leave the base matters to you. Of course, Krilo knew that Uvogin would not come back, so he got up early in the morning and went out. Okay, I know what to do, Knight nodded. Not long after, the others came out of their rooms, and when Nobunaga saw Knight, he asked, Is Uvogin back? Knight shook his head and said, There is no news yet. The boss has gone out. You, Maki, Pakinoda, and Finks should also work in groups. Be careful. Once you confirm it's him, you must catch him, dead or alive. Got it. The 4 left. Knight looked at the remaining members and said, For now, we stay here and wait for news. No one is allowed to leave. Hisaka, he looked at the red-haired guy sitting at the highest desk, Did you go out last night? Really? What's wrong? Hisaka asked with a raised eyebrow. Forget about yesterday, going forward, no one acts alone. Knight delivered the order directly. Oh? Is that so? Hisaka murmured. His actual purpose in joining the brigade was to fight Krilo, and he wasn't informed of internal operations. Besides, the group hadn't taken collective action since he joined, and nobody had explained Knight's authority. With no one disputing the order, surprise flashed in his eyes. An ominous prophecy was received by Krilo while the base debated how to handle the 2 children captured by Nobunaga and his men. An important calendar page has been torn. The dusty old things will be unveiled one by one. A grand welcome ceremony is essential. Then let the remaining moon take the lead. The sun will be swallowed by the heavenly dog in the month of Mao. In untimely months. Accompanied by the leaves under the moon. The chrysanthemums may wither. The wailing of the flaming eyes will not stop. Your position will also be threatened. Don't worry about being alone. There will be new surprises to the east. Knight now had a headache. 2 kids who hadn't learned Nen had gone out recklessly. Their families, especially the Zulks, were terrified. Offending that clan could ruin them. If they killed the future Zoldyck heir, they'd be hunted forever. And Nobunaga was already pushing to recruit the young girl into the brigade. Let them go, they're not chained anyway, said Knight. No, I have to wait for the boss to come back, Nobunaga insisted. Let him whine, Knight thought. Then he addressed the others, Though there's no solid lead yet, I've discovered that the gangsters who attended the auction have gathered in the Cemetery building. The boss told me to go there. Kill every gangster encountered on the way. Don't touch those inside yet, the boss will handle that. We regroup at base afterward. Nobunaga, you stay with the 2 kids. Everyone else, pair up. What about me? Maki asked. Group up with the lone guy, Knight replied. The one who's alone? Maki looked at Hisaka, who was lazily playing cards. Her face went pale. I won't detail every encounter, but along the way they attacked gangsters in pairs. Inside the Cemetery building, Krilo had brought in Miss Nosra, whose ability he stole, and knocked her unconscious. He operated like a hunting spider, waiting for every hired assassin to enter his web. Those ordinary hitmen were no match, their hiding and sniping skills were far inferior to Krilo's, and they lacked patience. After slitting one man's throat, another fearless opponent challenged him. "There are only two of us, so let's have a one-on-one fight," said the thug, unaware he had fallen straight into the spider's trap. "Okay." Krolo responded calmly, expression blank. A hidden thief's secret spread a bloody red palm print, and suddenly two long, white catfish appeared in the sealed room. The thug was bitten before he could react. His body stiffened, he couldn't move. He could only watch the fish devour him alive. "Are you afraid?" Krolo asked, then looked at the man, half-eaten, screaming. "What kind of monster is this?" he cried. Krolo smiled faintly. "These catfish can only survive in a confined space. Delivered bites cause loss of feeling and movement, leaving victims to watch themselves be eaten. It's disgusting even to think about." He pressed a key and opened the automatic window, revealing void beyond. The catfish turned into a blood-red cloud, then vanished. The body dropped to the floor. He closed the book, Thief's Secret, and it disappeared with the bloody handprint cover in his palm. Distant roars and explosions echoed, like fireworks, brilliant and grand. Krolo walked to the open French window, raised both hands, and appeared to conduct a deadly symphony. He pondered the prophecy. An important page of the calendar has been torn, likely refers to Uvagan's critical injury. The dusty old events will be unveiled one by one, perhaps referring to the Red Eyes dispute 5 years ago or the Three-Corner conflict 3 years ago, the sparks that ignited today's plan. A grand welcoming ceremony is indispensable. Let the remaining moon take the lead, a macabre funeral masquerading as ceremony, burying the old guard. The sun, swallowed by the moon in the month of Mao, signifies darkness in that month. Could Hisoka vanish? Pause, take the lead might also hint at someone stepping forward. Then, with leaves falling under the moon, chrysanthemums may wither, implying brigade members in peril. The wailing of the fiery red eyes will not stop vengeance unending. Your position will also be threatened. Don't go alone. New surprises to the east, future instability, solo journeys, and unforeseen twists lie ahead. What a fascinating future. Krolo closed his eyes, swayed to the eerie fireworks, that welcome or funeral, and seemed to whisper, "Let's see where fate takes us." Humph, are they coming? Feeling mounting pressure, Krolo snapped back to alertness. Was Katsuya on the way? Who was approaching? He left the room swiftly. The space was too narrow, his opponent too skilled. He couldn't drop his guard. Plus, he had plans to steal one more ability. Chapter 77 In an empty conference hall on the 16th floor, Krolo stood at the podium, his eyes fixed on the two silver-haired men who appeared at the door. Ha, they really thought highly of him. It must have cost a lot to send both former heads of the Zoldyck family. There was no need for small talk when facing such masters. Krolo advanced step by step, then suddenly shot forward like a bolt of lightning, clashing with the two Zoldycks. The punches from Zeno, the current Zoldyck family chairman, were sharp and fierce. Though the old man was short, he was incredibly agile. A misstep allowed a gust of wind to slice a gash across Krolo's left cheek, and blood seeped out. Krolo quickly retreated, brows furrowed. It was hard to find an opening when fighting two at once. He drew a long dagger from his waist and re-engaged. His blade slashed across Silva's arm, forcing both Zoldycks back. "Captain, how about letting me intervene?" A voice rang out from the opposite windowsill. Krolo didn't even need to look, he knew who it was. But the two Zoldycks turned their heads, spotting a blonde, blue-eyed teenage boy sitting casually, swinging his legs with a grin. But the murderous aura emanating from him made them doubly alert. The Zoldyck family had its own intelligence network. Even if their info on the Phantom Troop was incomplete, there was no way they didn't know of Knight, who frequently appeared as the troop's spokesperson in private dealings. He looked like mere logistics support, but those unfamiliar with him had no idea. Knight ranked among the top 3 or 4 strongest in the troop. Krolo alone was already formidable. Now with another powerful threat. Silva exchanged a glance with his father and cursed silently. This job was a terrible deal. Knight didn't care what they thought. He leapt from the sill and said, "Captain, which one should I take?" Swish, rage flared in the Zoldyck's eyes. That casual tone, did they think nothing of the Zoldyck name? Krolo said calmly, "The old one is mine." "Really? Well then," Knight walked forward with 2 daggers, one red and one blue. 3 years ago, you killed number 8, right? Time to settle the score." He vanished before the sentence was done. Silva stiffened. That stealth. Had this guy trained in the Zoldyck assassin arts? A sudden gust of wind grazed his ear. He reacted instantly, spinning and slashing with his deformed cat claws in the direction of the sound. On the other side, Krolo opened his book with his right hand, while a massive red curtain unfurled silently in his left. Zeno didn't dare get close. A dragon-shaped aura beast appeared from his palm, jaws wide as it lunged at Krolo. Both fights were intense and dangerous. Krolo, realizing he couldn't subdue Zeno with Nen abilities alone, opted for close combat. But the old man had decades more experience. It was hard to tell who had the upper hand. They were also conserving strength. Knight and Silva's fight was more explosive. Neither specialized in enhancement. Transformation types had faster development. Knight never clashed directly with Silva. He relied on agility, darting in and out, searching for an opening. Silva, unwilling to give an inch, used deadly precision. His claws were harder than steel. After taking a blow due to underestimating Knight's dagger, Silva unleashed a blinding sphere of light between his hands and slammed it down. Boom! Walls cracked. Lights, curtains, and debris rained down, burying both fighters under rubble. Even Krolo and Zeno paused, eyeing each other for sneak attacks as they glanced at the scene. Ring, ring, ring. Someone's phone rang loudly. A hand emerged from the rubble. Moments later, a dusty Silva surfaced and answered the phone with a cold expression. "Hello, Dad? Is my employer still fighting with you? Tell him the mission's done. He should wire the rest of the payment now." It was Illumi Zoldyck. The voice was loud. Whether Silva turned up the volume or not was unclear. Even Krolo, not nearby, heard it. As he turned to see Zeno's reaction, a groan from Silva and the clatter of bricks interrupted him. Zeno rushed over, and Krolo also retreated. Though covered in dust, Knight looked like a predator. His body was crouched in attack form, his blue dagger dripping blood. 5 meters away, Silva's arm hung limp. Pain flickered across his face. Without a word, Zeno signaled him to retreat, and the 2 Zoldycks vanished. "What a pity," Krolo said calmly. Knight straightened and sheathed his daggers. "A duel is a duel. With 2 more of us, we might have taken them. Don't forget there's still an old man in the Zoldyck family. That Maha Zoldyck is supposedly very powerful," Krolo said. "All right. We've done what we needed to. Let's get the next auction in order." Knight stretched and grinned. Time to ask Cordopi to whip up some illusions. Krolo ignored him and called the spiders, instructing them not to harm the ambulance transporting Neon Nostrate. Cordopi had already duplicated corpses of the members exposed in the wanted posters, even Krolo's, making them look horrific and scattering them around to fool the underworld. Knight quickly returned backstage to manage the auction, where the host sold Cordopi's counterfeits at high prices. With the large profits from selling forgeries, the spiders retracted their fangs and returned to hiding. No one asked what happened to the 2 boys Nobunaga had been guarding. Spiders minded their own business. Knight let out a quiet sigh. He had really hoped to take out one, or both, of the former and current Zoldyck heads to initiate the family's downfall. Their continued existence remained a threat to the Phantom Troop. A weapon that responds only to payment. If it couldn't be wielded, it might as well be destroyed. "This mission's over. We leave tonight and take all the treasure." Krolo had just gotten off the phone with Clandali. That schemer had been secretly dealing with the Phantom Troop and now emerged as a powerful new player, freed from his previous shackles. But he still feared Krilo and the troop, eager to learn more about their abilities. The real goal now: identify the traitor among them. Krilo's announcement was bait. As expected, Nobunaga was first to erupt, face dark. "What about the chain guy? We haven't caught him yet." "Do you care?" Krilo asked. "Yes. I care a lot. I won't leave until I avenge Uvagin and kill that man." "Nobunaga, don't push it. That's the boss's order." The straightforward Franklin spoke up. "Is that your order, Krilo? As the leader?" Chapter 78-. Knight laughed inwardly. Nobunaga had just blurted out Krilo's name in front of everyone. He would pay for that later. "Then what are you going to do?" Krilo asked calmly. "Of course we have to find the chain user and avenge Uvagin," Nobunaga shouted. "Are we really just going to leave like this? What else do you want?" Krilo replied. "You and Uvagin were both part of the special attack unit. You volunteered for the job. Uvagin was killed by an enemy over a personal grudge. Even if it had happened on a mission, that still would have been his own responsibility." His words were cold, but to Krilo and most of the Phantom Troop, he was simply stating facts, because even after he said it, no one objected. Still, Nobunaga seethed with frustration. Krilo sighed, and the thief's secret appeared in his hand. "Nobunaga, tell me your full name, birthday, and blood type." Nobunaga, confused but compliant, wrote the information on a slip of paper. Krilo turned to the page for Angel's automatic writing, and swiftly penned Nobunaga's prophetic verse. "An important calendar page has been torn. The dusty old things will be unveiled one by one. With the hatred of the fiery eyes. You will also fall into a deep sleep. Without the green leaves illuminated by the moon. Will wither in the dark night. Only the lonely chrysanthemum is left. The cold wind will take its life. The remaining companions. Please remember not to travel alone." Krilo explained, "This is a new ability I've acquired, 100% accurate future predictions. Previous poems have also mentioned the loss of companions. This means that if we stay here, more of us will die." Nobunaga stared at the paper for a while before speaking. "I can't really make sense of most of it, but yeah, it sounds like more members are going to die." Krilo continued, "The 12 moons represent our 12 members. Uvagin is already dead. The chrysanthemum refers to September, Kikutsuki. The leaves signify August. And Mutsuki. That's you, Nobunaga." "What about the fiery eyes? That's not one of us, right?" Finks asked. "Most likely the chain user," Krilo said. Pakinoda suddenly recalled, "I remember now. There was a group whose eyes turned red." "Oh yeah, that mission where we clashed with the Hunter Association, right?" Knight said. "Someone must have escaped." Krilo turned to Nobunaga. "Now do you still think we should stay?" Nobunaga hesitated. "But," Krilo pressed, "it's the first week of September now. If we leave today, we'll avoid the chain user next week, and we won't take this risk. I didn't say we won't avenge Uvagin. But if you insist on rushing into this when we know the cost is high, then I'm not qualified to lead the spiders anymore. The Phantom Troop's code clearly says that personal revenge is a private matter. Don't bring it into the troop. Nobunaga, the prophecy says your death may drag down 2 others. You're arguing with me over something you could still do later. So, who's wrong, you, or me?" Nobunaga finally fell silent. Krilo looked away and raised his chin slightly. "All right, next, everyone else, give me your birthday and blood type." "I am Krilo, the dividing line for everyone." Knight reviewed his prophecy, raising an eyebrow. "The spider's 11th leg is broken. But the hunting net is ready." The delicious feast has been devoured. There are additional surprises waiting for you. The vengeful enemy is in bewilderment. Although he was hesitant, and will be blinded by hatred. Please be careful of that restless foot. Even if the puppet strings are in your hands. Interesting. Knight smirked slightly. According to the prophecy, he wouldn't be hit hard, though he might still be injured. The restless foot, could that mean Hisoka? But then again, Krilo already understood how to avoid danger. So was Krilo the one who wasn't entirely safe. Looks like something will happen to me next week. Shizuku suddenly blurted out. Krilo said, "Let me see your prophecy." Shizuku bounded over and handed him her paper. Knight looked around. Except for Pakinoda, who looked tense, everyone else seemed expressionless. Hisoka sat up high with his back to the light, his face unreadable. Suddenly, Pakinoda stood up, walked straight to Hisoka, and extended her hand. "Hisoka, give me your prophecy." "You want to see my prophecy?" "That's not really for you," Hisoka replied in a sing-song voice. "Hand it over," Pakinoda demanded. Hisoka turned and passed the paper to her. Pakinoda read aloud. "A red-eyed customer visited your store. Asked to barter with you. He took out the sword of restraint. Took away the secrets of the moons. Homesick spiders. Will get hurt again. At a time you don't know. Invisible hands stir the unknown future. Stay safe in the spider's web. Or no one knows what your tomorrow will be. Hisoka, you betrayed Uvogin." Nobunaga rushed over, grabbed the paper, and after a quick look, his expression changed drastically. He shouted, furious. Hisoka said nothing, simply covering his twisted smile with a plain card. How could they know that his prophecy had another, hidden meaning? "A red-eyed customer visited your store. He is half angel, half death. Sell him the secrets of the moons. The news about Shimotsuki will please him greatly. No need to bother making a deal with the man with the inverted cross. He will meet you with a puppeteer. Best not to act rashly. Your mask is flawless. Krilo, you're already suspicious of me, aren't you? But if I give up our fight, it'll only hurt more." Hisoka thought, licking his lips greedily. Let's set aside the chaos that erupted in the troop due to Hisoka's prophecy. Rewind to the day before. Kurapika, mistakenly thinking he had killed Uvogin, returned in a daze to the hotel room booked under the Nostrade family. Ignoring everyone, he shut the door and collapsed on the floor. His eyes, covered by black contact lenses, had never lost their burning red rage. "I remember we only took 1/5. The rest went to the underworld and the Hunter Association." Uvogin's words still echoed in his head. Kurapika shook his head violently. "No, he's just lying to himself," he thought. "The Phantom Troop are evil scum, how can I trust anything they say? Kid, I don't have to lie." Still that voice. Still echoing, Chapter 79-. There is no need to lie. He didn't deny his crime, just looked slightly doubtful. "I remember we caught a few and sent them to the Hunter Association's Special Research Laboratory." "The Hunter Association's dedicated research lab? So confident, aren't you afraid your lie will be exposed?" "But it's the Hunter Association. Kurapika's symbol of justice and fairness. How could they?" Someone's voice whispered in his head again, "A hunter license is a legal license to kill." A license to kill? Can calling it legal really erase the blood? Kurapika suddenly recalled the hunter exam. Of the 400+ candidates, only a few passed. The rest, injured or dead. Especially on Zebaru Island, when the examiner ordered them to hunt each other. It had felt natural then, but now, thinking back, the examiner's eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. And he was a hunter too. How could they enjoy watching ordinary people kill one another? No, he couldn't think like that. Most people in the world are kind. That Uvogin was lying. Kurapika repeated this to himself. Gradually, the fury in his brow eased, and his red eyes, hidden by black lenses, faded to blue. Whatever else was going on, his current goal was to recover the Kurta clan eyes seen at the auction. The rest could wait. Back at the Phantom Troop's temporary base. When Hisaka didn't speak, Nobunaga growled, "I'll take that as agreement." He drew his blade and prepared to strike. "Wait," Franklin stopped him. "Let him speak. What's there to say? The prophecy clearly says Hisaka sold out Uvogin to the red-eyed customer." "Calm down," shouted Knight. He wasn't ready to close the net, not yet. There wasn't solid proof of Hisaka's betrayal. Or maybe Knight didn't want to admit he'd already placed a tracker on Kurapika. The captain said the prophecy's purpose is to avoid danger. Everyone turned to look. Franklin asked, "Hisaka, what happened to you this week?" Hisaka replied with feigned indifference, "I can't say." "Damn it." Nobunaga had drawn his sword. Hisaka added, "But the first line of the prophecy has already come true. You hear that? Get out of my way." Nobunaga barked at Franklin, then leapt and slashed, but missed. "So fast?" Nobunaga muttered. In his mind, Hisaka wasn't that strong. Not faster than Phaeton, certainly. "No, it's me," came a voice from below. Knight folded his arms and watched coldly. Kurlo. Was he going to extract more info about the chain user from Hisaka? "Nobunaga, stand down," said Kurlo. "Hisaka, I have a few questions. If you can't answer, just say so. First, what was taken in the prophecy?" "The ability of a troop member." "What ability does the other person have?" "I can't say." "What do they look like?" "I can't say." "What's your relationship with them?" "I can't say." Kurlo was visibly furious. "That's enough," he said. Some of this he already knew from Knight, but Hisaka's replies helped him piece together more. The red-eyed customer must be the chain user. He likely has at least two abilities, one that defeated Uvogin, and one that restricts Hisaka. The sort of restriction probably refers to a Nen contract forcing Hisaka to obey and not reveal info. Hisaka remained silent, but the glint in his eye confirmed it. If he breaks the agreement, the chain user can kill him, right? Kurlo concluded. Hisaka said nothing, only smiled eerily. "Either way, I'm not leaving. I have unfinished business before I die." No one answered. Instead, Finks asked, "What's homesick?" Franklin explained, "It probably means going back to Meteor City, our home. If we do, more members may die." Knight turned to Kurlo. "Captain, your decision?" "We stay," Kurlo replied. Hisaka lied. That was what Knight believed. Kurapika had never told him about a restriction being placed on Hisaka, which meant something was off. Could Hisaka have faked his prophecy? Probably. But should he warn Kurlo? And how? Regardless, the group was already speculating about the chain user's abilities. Nobunaga snapped, "Why are we just sitting here? Finding him is more important." Kurlo replied calmly, "According to the prophecy, we must split into groups. No one moves alone." He divided the remaining members into 4 groups. Hisaka stayed behind, a subtle form of surveillance. With that, Knight disengaged from the conversation. Kurlo already identified that Kurapika wasn't just out for revenge, he wanted the Kurta eyes. Kurlo asked Kurtapi to track the location of the duplicated red eyes, then prepped a team to leave. He swapped Knight with Kurtapi. Knight thought, if you still get duped after taking 5 people with you, Kurlo, then maybe you're just not that good. After all, the enemy's backup consists of 3 greenhorns and a music hunter with mediocre strength. Watching their backs as they left, Knight's green eyes narrowed. "I'll check for new intel online," he told those left behind and returned to his room. Knight hadn't been in his room even 30 minutes when Finks knocked and entered. Knight, Maki just called. The boss wants us to go to Becky's hotel. They've captured 2 kids, the same ones from last time. Knight, who had been monitoring Kurapika, already knew. Though he stayed calm, he was surprised. The heir of an assassin family making the same mistake again and again, did he want to die? If he really got in Krillow's way, Krillow wouldn't hesitate to oppose the Zulks. So Knight stood and said, "Really? Then aside from the stay-behind team, you, Phaeton, and I will go." He leaned closer and whispered into Fink's ear, "Tell Franklin to watch Hisoka closely." Chapter 80-. The dividing line where the card is grabbed, his pupil shrank slightly, and Knight's eyes filled with vigilance. Kurapika. If he hadn't planted a chip on this Avenger beforehand, his abilities would have been nearly impossible to guard against. In just 0.5 seconds, he used his chains to bind Krillow and take him away. At that speed, probably only Phaeton could have reacted. Fortunately, they didn't flee far. There was no need to worry about Krillow's life being in danger. But Kurapika, since you've chosen the path of vengeance, have you considered that your mediocre companions are now your greatest weakness? But the spiders, raised in Meteor City and indifferent to life, didn't understand that. Naturally, conflict arose. Knight followed their wishes and agreed to let Pakinoda go alone to negotiate. Interlude. "I didn't expect the chain user to be a woman," said Krillow, with the calm of someone who didn't realize he was a hostage. Kurapika wiped lipstick from his lips and removed his wig. "Oh, so you disguised yourself as hotel staff. And the timing was decided last minute, wasn't it?" Krillow mused when he saw the group in the car. "You're asking why I slaughtered your people?" Krillow asked mildly. Such a pure question. Because everyone wants what's rare. The rarer the beast, the more it's hunted. The same goes for scarlet eyes. He stared at Kurapika's red eyes. If the last living Korta were sold on the black market, they'd fetch far more than a pair of disembodied eyes. And so Krillow was beaten. The others returned to the temporary base per Kurapika's instructions. On the way, Finks called Franklin, explained the situation, and told him not to act rashly. "Knight, what should we do?" Maki asked. Knight had just looked away from Hisoka, carefully, without leaving a trace. Now. He ran a hand through his hair. "We still don't know enough. Let's wait until Pakinoda gets back and explains. That's all we can do." Finks yawned and sat on a boulder, resting his head on his hand. "Knight, is this okay?" asked Kordapi. "Whether it's okay or not, that's up to the chain user." Knight had dropped his smile. "These 2 hostages must be closely guarded. They're our key bargaining chip for getting the leader back." "Got it." Knight said no more and found a seat. The first person he saw in the room was Hisoka. Though he looked the same, it didn't feel like Hisoka. Hisoka knew someone else who excelled at disguises. Humph. The eldest son of the Zoldyck family is here too. What would he think, seeing his brother caught so easily? Soon, Pakinoda returned and informed them how the chain user wanted to arrange the hostage exchange, stirring suspicion. Maki and Shizuku supported her plan, but were suspected of being manipulated by the chain user. Knight was speechless. It was obvious they didn't understand Nen conditions. If you're from a different category, your understanding is limited. Even if Kurapika had a restricting ability, the conditions and number of people he could control were harsh, and highly dependent on his own strength. Even Knight could probably only restrain 3 troop members at most. "Enough. Quiet down." Knight finally barked. "Huh?" Phaeton halted mid-threat, glancing at the suddenly commanding Knight. "Knight. What's your view?" Franklin asked. Knight turned to Pakinoda. "You and the boss. You're both restrained by the chain user, right?" Pakinoda paused, then nodded. "Yes." "What, even the boss?" Nobunaga blurted out. "Nobunaga, be quiet," said Knight. Captain. Finks quickly clamped his hand over Nobunaga's mouth. You. Maki began to speak, then fell silent, her expression turning grim. Ignoring her, Knight continued, you didn't explain the reason or method for the exchange because of the restriction, right? Pakinoda bit her lip. Yes. Knight stood. Fine. You can go alone, but I have something to say privately. Let's talk outside. He walked out. After a brief pause, Pakinoda followed. Pakinoda, what do you want to say? She asked. Though never fond of Knight, especially because of his bond with Kurlo, she trusted he wouldn't put Kurlo in danger. Pakinoda, Knight leaned close and whispered, I suspect Hisoka is a traitor. If you're going to handle the hostage exchange, you must. A few minutes later, Knight and Pakinoda returned. Knight told her to take Gon and Killua away. Then he said, okay, we wait for Pakinoda's good news. Maki looked uneasy. Is the captain okay? Knight replied calmly, I guarantee his life isn't in danger. That was enough. Maki exhaled. In the eyes of a spider, hope lived as long as the captain did. Pakinoda left with the boys, but didn't restrain them. On the way, she asked, why don't you two try to escape? Why should we? Gon asked. You could easily outrun me. If you ran, we'd lose our leverage, and the chain user might kill our boss. Why not? Aren't you his partners? Because, Killua began, but Gon interrupted, because we are his partners. We don't want Kurapika to kill anyone. So as long as the hostage exchange works, it's the best ending, Killua finished. Really? Pakinoda hesitated, then patted their shoulders. Okay. Let's go. They arrived at Ring Palace Square, where Yukexen's airship was parked. Kurapika called and instructed Pakinoda to take the two hostages to another location via airship. Then Hisoka appeared. Hisoka? Why are you here? Pakinoda was both angry and nervous. If the chain user thought they were violating the agreement, what would he do to the boss? Hisoka ignored her. In his eyes, she was an unripe fruit. The one he really wanted was already aboard the airship. If you don't let me board, I'll kill those two kids, he said to Kurapika. My target is only the boss. As expected, Kurapika relented. The two airships flew across the skies to a flat, barren plain. They landed on a small hill. Pakinoda stood beside her airship with the hostages, far from Hisoka, watching the group 60 to 70 meters away. Her phone rang. Put the phone on a hostage, ordered a shrill little voice. Killua and Gon placed the phone on their chests so Melody could listen to their heartbeats. Only after confirming they weren't being controlled did Kurapika agree to proceed. Kurapika left happily with the rescued hostages. Kurlo walked forward slowly. The wind blew Pakinoda's hair as they passed each other, but their eyes never met. Chapter 81 Then, Knight walked to the other side. Wait a moment, Hisoka said slowly. Knight stopped, still with his back to him, but did not speak. What are you going to do, Hisoka? Pakinoda stepped forward to block Hisoka's sight and asked. Get out of the way, woman. Hisoka spoke to Pakinoda bluntly. Anyone who stood in his way at this time would die. My goal is just to fight Captain Kurlo, he said. If you disagree, I don't mind killing you. Pakinoda asked coldly, Hisoka, you sneaked out of the base alone, does that mean you've betrayed us? If so, I will kill you according to the rules of the Phantom Troop. The troop does not allow betrayal, and there is only one way out for traitors. Hisoka said nonchalantly, betrayal, so what if I betrayed you? What can you do to me? He knew that as a special personnel, Pakinoda's strength was not that great, she definitely wouldn't be his opponent. Since you've admitted your betrayal, of course I must kill you, Pakinoda shouted, and suddenly covered him with a black curtain in her hand, but in an instant, the blonde and blue-eyed baby-faced spider appeared in her place. Hisoka, Knight said, I've long wanted to kill you with my own hands." Hisoka had never expected this turn of events. He was stunned for a moment, then suddenly burst into hysterical laughter. "Oh ha 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 ha, so that's it, hee, it comes full circle, just like the prophecy. The man with the inverted cross will meet you with the puppeteer, but now it seems that the puppet master is the real body, right?" Hisoka's last sentence was obviously meant to sow discord between Knight and Krilo, but Krilo had no choice in this situation, and Knight had no scruples. The black-haired man snorted and walked down the hill. He knew that since the man who came was Knight, it meant he had already arranged everything. He himself was going east to look for that surprise. Hisoka was surprised. Knight was obviously plotting against Krilo, but Krilo just left without a word. What was going on? "Are you confused?" Knight asked. Hisoka, the reason why Krilo is the leader of the Phantom Troop is because he can lead and command all the members to do evil things. But Krilo, restrained by chains, unable to use telekinesis and unable to contact the people in the troop, has lost that ability. Someone like that, even if still recognized as a member of the troop, can no longer be the leader. Since he's no longer the leader, what right do you have to question my decision?" Knight tore off his skirt, revealing the tight shorts he wore underneath, and threw the women's suit he'd taken off Pakinoda to the ground, revealing his strong muscles. Hisoka couldn't help but be stunned for a moment, then looked at Knight with interest. "So, you are the leader of the Phantom Troop now?" "Of course," said Knight. Before, Hisoka had been surprised that Knight's orders would be obeyed by other members. Now it seemed that Knight's prestige in the group was definitely no less than Krilo's. "Well, since you are the leader of the Phantom Troop, I can fight you." Hisoka's face twisted with excitement. He was truly surprised today, thinking he had tricked the troop, but in fact he was the one being tricked by Knight. He had indeed found another opponent he favored. Yes, Hisoka also wanted to fight Knight, but this man's whereabouts were harder to trace than Krilo's. I really can't write the dividing line of this fight that ends with Hisoka being seriously injured and escaping. Ring, 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 Phaeton's cell phone suddenly rang. He called out in surprise and saw an unfamiliar number. "Hello, who is this?" Phaeton hesitated for a few seconds and answered the phone. "Phaeton, it's me." Phaeton's pupils suddenly shrank. "Don't bluff. The one in the base is not me." "What's the matter?" Fortunately, Phaeton had his face covered and was sitting in a corner, so no one saw his expression go blank for a second. "Catch Hisoka, no, catch Illumi Zoldyck who is dressed as Hisoka, and I'll be back soon." After Phaeton hung up, Nobunaga asked hurriedly, "Was that Captain? What does he want us to do?" Phaeton stood up. "He wants us to catch this Hisoka in the base." The playing cards in Illumi's hand fell to the ground. So when Knight returned, the first person he saw was Illumi, who had been tied up tightly by Maki's thread and restored to his original form. Then he heard Nobunaga's voice, "What's going on? Why are there two Knights?" "That's Pakinoda." Knight spoke lightly, and the curtain in his hand shook, and Pakinoda returned to her original state. Then he patted her shoulder, a chip popped out, and Pakinoda's eyes regained their spirit. "What's going on? Where is the captain?" asked Maki. "Krilo is fine, his telekinesis has been sealed, and he can't come back." After Knight said this, the atmosphere in the base suddenly became heavy and stagnant, as if frozen. "Ah," Finks shouted as if realization dawned, "Knight, I didn't expect that after all these years you'd still want to usurp the throne." "Is it not possible, Finks?" The Knight had a half-smile. "Hey, I don't care about your affairs with Krilo." Finks didn't want trouble. He didn't know how long Knight had planned this. In recent years, Krilo basically proposed a direction, and Knight executed it. In fact, the members of the group all followed Knight's arrangements, and his status was no different from that of the leader. So for Finks, it didn't matter who officially held the title. Nobunaga became a little irritated. "Knight, I knew you had bad intentions. Tell me where the captain is." As he spoke, he prepared to attack. "Stop, Nobunaga," Franklin said. "Knight said the captain is fine, no need to be nervous." "Knight. Knight." Everyone looked at him, but Knight directed his gaze at Pakunoda. "Pakunoda, tell them what restriction the chain hand gave to Krilo?" Pakunoda bit her lip and, after a few seconds, raised her pale face. "The first restriction the chain hand gave the captain is that he cannot use telekinesis, and the second is that he cannot have any contact with spiders." As soon as she said this, the dissatisfied looks cast on Knight nearly disappeared. The troop cannot be without a leader, and Krilo is absolutely not suitable to lead in the current situation, and Knight. "I have no objection to Knight being the team leader." Cordopi was the first to speak. One after another, several more agreed. Nobunaga sulked in place. Knight looked at him and said, "Nobunoda, Uvagin is at 231 Rio Road, go bring him back." "What, Uvagin is still alive?" Nobunoda exclaimed, jumping 8 feet high. "Do you think I would let the troops' combat power be wasted in vain?" Knight turned his head slightly to look at him, his calm face exuding oppressive power. Nobunoda murmured and fell silent, then turned to go fetch Uvagin. Knight said to Illumi again, "Now that you know what happened, I will ask a favor. If you agree, everything will go smoothly. If you don't..." He didn't finish the threat, but the menace was clear. "Of course," Illumi nodded. "Okay. I want you to protect Krilo until he recovers his telekinesis, and act as communicator between the troop and Krilo during this period. This mission cannot be told to anyone else, including your family. If it delays your other missions, the Phantom Troop will compensate you fully," said Knight. "Okay." Illumi readily agreed. It wasn't a difficult task for him. "Okay, Maki, let him go," said Knight. "Yes, Captain." Maki's use of captain meant the dust had finally settled. Chapter 82-. Knight gave Illumi Krilo's phone number. Since they were going to exchange hostages, Kurapika had naturally returned it to Krilo, and told him his location at the time, then let him leave. Next, Knight said to his team members, "There will be 3 more auctions over the next few days. 2/3 of the auction items I previously found will appear in these auctions." Originally, this event was just a crackdown on the underworld organization led by the 10 Dons. Now that the 10 Dons are dead, the mission is essentially complete. However, if there are still items you want from the auctions, feel free to stay a few more days. Shizuku asked blankly, "Aren't we going after that chain user?" "No need. Pakunoda and Krilo are still restrained by him. We can't confront the chain user until we figure out how to remove the chains," said Knight. No one objected to this. Phaeton spoke up, "I want that game." "You mean Greed Island?" "Sure. It's the final item in tomorrow's auction. We'll decide our future plans after obtaining it." After saying this, Knight rested his chin on his hand and fell into deep thought. He was certain it wasn't just the Phantom Troop and the underworld involved in this auction. When Krilo left that day and was researching information, he had already seen a photo uploaded to the Hunter Association website of Neon, the Nostrade family member renowned for her fortune-telling and sought after by underworld elites. There were also 2 more photos of her family's bodyguards. This information couldn't have come from within the underworld. A fortune-teller in such high demand wouldn't be easily exposed. The Nostrade family had been on the rise for the past 3 years, meaning Neon had been predicting for underworld bosses since then. Now, at this crucial moment, her identity had been revealed. Someone was orchestrating this from the shadows. Who was that person? What forces were behind him? Did he harbor intentions toward the troop? Let's set aside Knight's thoughts and turn our attention to Krilo, now alone and without Nen. Krilo walked slowly across a barren plain, thinking about Knight's role in the past 2 days. Everything had seemed normal at first. After Uvagin was captured, Knight returned claiming he wanted to expose a traitor within the troop. That felt suspicious. Krolo didn't deny suspecting Hisoka. The man had always been a misfit and was invited to join only so Krolo could observe him and discover his weaknesses. Knight appeared to know Hisoka was the traitor at the time, but how? Then he came to exchange hostages on Pakinota's behalf. Was it because he knew Hisoka had left the base? Or? That's right, Knight never even looked at him at that time. Pakinota had been restricted by Kurapika and couldn't reveal the secret, yet Knight had acted decisively and let Hisoka go without even asking. So, he knew about the chain user's abilities? But how? Krolo stood still, covering his mouth with his hand, deep in thought. Knight must have known Kurapika beforehand. He must have implanted some medium for surveillance on him, allowing him to track everything. Thinking this through, Krolo couldn't help but laugh. Knight had gone to great lengths to ensure Krolo's loss. Should he be thankful for his kindness? Ring, 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 his cell phone rang. Huh? Krolo frowned. Who else, aside from troop members, knew his number? Hello, is this Mr. Krolo Lucifer? A calm, detached voice spoke. I'm Illumi Zoldyck. The Phantom Troop's leader, Knight, asked me to provide you with protection until you recover. May I ask your location? So he's already the leader? Though not surprised, Krolo couldn't help but feel impressed. Knight's control of the troop rivaled his own. And now he had entrusted the Zoldyck family to protect him. Okay. I'm at 30. Come quickly. Krolo ended the call. Of course he would accept this gesture. Looking toward the gray skyline, now faintly tinged with light, Krolo let out a rare, genuine smile. Go east? He murmured, recalling his prophetic poem. What surprise awaits me in the east? His current desire was to lift Kurapika's restrictions, so somewhere in the east, there must be someone capable of removing Nen. A Nen exorcist? The ability to remove Nen, what a pleasant surprise. Krolo was genuinely pleased. Before long, Illumi arrived. In his eyes, Krolo was dusty, bruised, and battered, yet held a calm kingly air as he gazed at the crimson sunrise. Illumi found it strange. His earlier words over the phone had been laced with subtle vengeance, yet Krolo, former troop leader, seemed unfazed after losing his position. You're here? Krolo didn't turn, but his sharp hearing picked up Illumi's approach. Even without Nen, Krolo was physically formidable. Yes. Mr. Lucifer, please bear with me over the next few days, Illumi said formally. No. Krolo finally turned, meeting Illumi's gaze with a smile. Let's go. This place isn't suitable. Where are we going? Illumi hesitated. I don't know, but there's someone I want to find in the east. Krolo's voice was calm as he began walking forward. Illumi was stunned. Did he already know that one of Illumi's missions was to act as a go-between for the Phantom Troop? Did he expect Illumi to report back to the dangerous new leader, Knight? Krolo had already gone far. Illumi quickly snapped out of his thoughts and caught up. Knight had spent the night thinking, but reached no conclusion. The spies within the Hunter Association had nothing noteworthy to report, and the Francis Wen family was equally silent. Because of Yuvagin's capture by Kurapika, the underworld had discovered the Phantom Troop's role in the auction attack. But the conflict between the two sides was already deep, so this revelation changed little. What was the true motive behind the mysterious manipulator? To weaken the underworld? To lure more people into coveting the young clairvoyant and make rival families fear and try to eliminate her? Knight had heard Krolo say that the girl never read her own prophecies, only others. Everyone around her would know that. So was it someone from her circle who leaked the secret? And who was behind them, a force even Knight hadn't heard of? Shaking his cluttered head, Knight looked up and realized it was already dawn. A message notification blinked on his phone. He opened it, a text from Illumi that read simply, Go east. The east? Knight pulled out a map. York New City was by the sea. To the east, aside from a few mid-sized cities, there was only one island floating in the sea. Well, never mind that for now, finding a Nen exorcist is their top priority. In the morning, Phaeton and Finks returned from the auction with the game someone had purchased. Knight carefully read through the instruction manual, even though it was written quite simply. It says, Chapter 83-. This is a game for hunters only. You must use Nen to enter. Given reports of numerous player deaths in the past, I infer the game is dangerous and there may be killings among participants. If you truly want to enter, you must be extremely cautious, Knight warned. Several members of the troupe had shown interest in the game, so he felt obligated to remind them. Humph. Phaeton turned his head away, confident in his own strength. Knight didn't get angry and continued, since this is a game, there must be game administrators. I imagine they have ways to punish players who violate the rules. As expected, Phaeton's ears reddened slightly. Finks laughed and said, Phaeton, you're still shameless as ever. You're looking for death. Phaeton lunged and started a fight with him. Knight turned and asked the others, one machine accommodates 4 people. We have 2 here. Who's staying behind? I don't care, said Maki. Shizuku cheered. Shizuku wants to go and see. Franklin asked, Captain, what about you? Knight stroked his chin and said, just save me 1 slot. I have a few things to handle before entering. It's said that Jitark has been in the game for 7 years without contact. That suggests it's very difficult to leave. I must ensure everything outside is stable for a while before I go in. After discussion, Shizuku, Phaeton, Finks, and Franklin entered the game via a console. Uvagin and Nobunaga weren't interested and returned to Meteor City. Bonolanov didn't want to go either. Maki, Pakinoda, and Koripi decided to wait until Knight had completed his tasks to join him. Over the next month, Knight made many preparations and contingency plans. He handed a copy of these to Lance Francis of the Francis family, and specifically briefed Bonolanov and Uvagin, both enhancement users. During this time, he spoke with Illumi on the phone several times and learned that Krolo was unusually relaxed. Knight couldn't help but feel stuck, annoyed but unable to express it. Krolo truly was at ease. Though no longer leader of the Phantom Troop, he still deeply cared for his spiders. But with Knight leading now, a cautious man who always had a plan, there was no reason to worry. So after he and Illumi left the plains, they didn't rush. Instead, they walked slowly toward the island. Although a bandit, Krolo was unlike Uvagin, who carried no money or tools. His success had earned him great wealth, enough to reach Watson, the closest city to the sea. Even in November, this equatorial coastal city remained spring warm. As a major port, Watson had a bustling transport industry. Each morning, Krolo would hear ship horns from his hotel. A new day already, Krolo murmured, setting down his book. Staying up all night reading had become a habit, though without Nen, fatigue caught up with him more quickly. This is such a hassle. He rubbed his temples. A normal person couldn't live without sleep. Krolo had developed the habit back in Meteor City, where constant vigilance was the price of survival. After all, sleeplessness was better than death. Though complaining, the black-haired man stretched, rose from his armchair, and walked to the bathroom to wash. His loose hair floated freely but wasn't messy. The cross on his forehead wasn't concealed, simply obscured by his bangs. His handsome face betrayed no age, and when he smiled faintly, the man in the mirror hardly looked like a 26-year-old, though his deep, black eyes held weariness that belied his youth. After adjusting his collar, Krolo left the bathroom, phoned room service for 2 breakfasts, and sat in the living room of his luxurious suite. Illumi Zoldyck, the eldest son of the Zoldyck family, sat silently on the couch like a puppet. "Good morning," Krolo greeted him. Illumi nodded silently. As a bodyguard, It wasn't his job to talk more than necessary. "I've booked a speedboat. After breakfast, we'll head for the island," Krilo said. Without Nen, he couldn't afford to relax. Enemies lurked everywhere. Even with a professional assassin for protection, he trusted only his troop. Unfortunately. "Is there really a Nen remover there?" Illumi asked. "There should be." Krilo nodded. "I imagine you'd like this mission to end soon. The sooner I recover, the better." He smiled politely, sincerely, even apologetically. Had Illumi not known how dangerous he was, he might have been fooled. Illumi remained quiet. The troop had offered generous compensation. But danger was danger. He recalled a phone call from his mother right before accepting the mission. Amid her hysterics, Illumi had gathered that his father, Silva Zoldyck, the current family head, had been injured during a mission from the Ten Dons. His attacker? The man now leading the Phantom Troop, Knight. Silva was a seasoned assassin. Illumi had only seen him injured twice, once 3 years ago when his mother was poisoned, and again more recently, when his grandfather mentioned an arm nearly lost. Both incidents involved Phantom Troop missions. He couldn't forget Silva's words, "Never clash with the Phantom Troop." During this time, he'd also received several calls from Hisoka. From their chats, Illumi inferred Hisoka had been injured, enough that he'd be out of activity, i.e., fighting, for at least a month. This heightened Illumi's caution. He couldn't afford to be their enemy, even if not their ally. He was also anxious. Of all the Zulks, only Illumi knew that Killua, his younger brother and heir to the family, had crossed the Phantom Troop multiple times. He wanted to find him and bring him home, after Krilo's recovery. After checking out, Krilo and Illumi headed to the port. Krilo made a call, and a burly sailor with a thick beard came rushing from a nearby tavern. "Mr. Lucilfer, you're up early." The man greeted him. "Yes, John. Is the boat ready?" Krilo asked with a smile. "Of course. I had my son tune it up just the other day. She's docked right over there." He pointed to a ship on the right. "Oh? What a coincidence," Krilo said, glancing across the port. "Is this telepathy?" He muttered under his breath. "Let's go," he said to John, turning to board. Illumi, puzzled, followed Krilo's gaze. Nearby, in front of a ship, someone was speaking, among them a cold purple-haired woman in a short top, a tall woman in a business suit, a small figure with long hair, and a blonde, baby-faced girl Illumi had seen several times. At their center stood the current Phantom Troop leader, Knight. As if sensing his gaze, Knight turned slightly and gave him a narrow-eyed smile. By the way, Knight wasn't in a hurry to enter the game. Beyond the extensive preparations he'd made, he also wanted to locate a Nen remover to help Krilo. According to Krilo's prophecy, the remover was likely on the island east of Yorknu City. So, after tying up loose ends, Knight set out with Maki, Pakanota, and Kordapi to investigate. Chapter 84 That's. Maki's intuition alerted her to a presence about 200 or 300 meters away. "It's Krilo and Illumi," Knight said calmly after turning around. "They're likely headed to the island as well." "Then, should we approach them?" Pakanota asked quickly, her eyes fixed on the back of the man in the white shirt. "Until his Nen has been removed, we must not contact him. Even if we face him directly, we cannot engage," Knight said. "Unless Illumi calls us to explain, treat Krilo as a stranger." Kordapi asked, "Since they've already gone, should we wait a few more days? If we land at the same time, won't that cause problems?" Knight replied, "Krilo's restriction is that he cannot deliberately contact members of the Phantom Troop. An accidental encounter shouldn't be an issue. Or do you think Krilo didn't notice us just now, Kordapi?" Kordapi shook his head. Everyone in the troop knew how sharp Krilo's perception was. He never missed a thing. "You think so too? Then it's fine for us to go." Another person means another chance to locate the Nen exorcist, and Pakanota still has restrictions that need removal. With that, Knight boarded their rented boat. The other 3 spiders exchanged glances, then followed. After nearly a day at sea, land finally appeared on the horizon. A flicker of excitement passed through them. If they could find a Nen exorcist, Krilo could. However, Maki looked at Knight's calm face with concern. If Krilo returned, would the two clash? Her intuition didn't reveal the outcome. Sadly, all she had was instinct, not prophecy. Forget it. Just as Finks said, why worry over those two? They'll resolve it themselves. Maki believed neither would jeopardize the troops' future. By the afternoon of the next day, their boat reached shore. Knight instructed the boatman to wait for them. Before he could speak further, a tall man with dark brown hair appeared suddenly on the grass ahead. How did he get there? Knight gave Maki a questioning look. I didn't see clearly, Maki responded with her eyes. I just saw a flash of light and then he appeared, said Cordopi. Huh? Are you stowaways? The man asked. Stowaways? Knight echoed, showing appropriate confusion. We were lost at sea and came here after spotting the island. Is this a private island? Sorry, but could you help us with navigation tools? And some food and water? Really? The man scratched his head. If you just drifted in, forget it. I'll send you back. Without waiting, he pulled out a card and said, Expel. A flash of light enveloped the group. After a moment of darkness, they found themselves elsewhere. This is Kenzaru Town. Maki recognized the location immediately. How did we end up here? Pakanota asked. Who was that guy? And that thing he used, it looked like a card. A card? Knight chuckled. He already knew where they had been sent. Meanwhile, Krilo, also expelled, guessed the place, but couldn't enter. Without Nen, he had no way in. And if this truly was that place, how was he supposed to locate a Nen exorcist among so many Nen users? Illumi suddenly said, My younger brother Kalito is good at tracking people. Huh? Krilo's black eyes flicked toward him. What's your angle? I want him to join the Phantom Troop after he finds the Nen exorcist, Illumi stated without hesitation. Krilo raised an eyebrow. The eldest Zoldyck son making such a request? But he only smiled faintly. I promised Knight that if I found a Nen exorcist, I'd recommend them to him. Whether Knight accepted was Krilo's concern no longer. Captain, you're saying that island is actually the game world? Pakanota exclaimed in disbelief. Why not? Only in a real game can real death occur, Knight said, rubbing his chin. That man who expelled us said little, but he was clearly a master. I used Gyo just before we were teleported. Though it looked like normal terrain, a significant area was saturated with Nen. Also, he added with a chuckle, I researched the game. Many cards have distinct functions. You mean like that card that guy used? Asked Cordopi. Exactly. He appeared right as we set foot on the island and used it on us. That suggests he wasn't a regular player, but probably a game administrator, said Knight. I'll call Illumi later to explain. If we enter the game, we likely won't be able to contact him for a while. We also need to set expectations in case we find the Nen exorcist. We'll enter 2 days from now. No one objected. 2 days later, the four returned to the villa Knight had purchased in Yorknu. One Greed Island console remained there. With preparations complete, Knight prepared to go first. Captain, Maki called out suddenly. There's something. What is it, Maki? Knight asked, smiling. But the warmth was gone. This was no longer Spider number 6, but the Phantom Troop's leader. His aura was commanding. What does the Zoldyck family want? Maki had overheard the conversation between Knight and Illumi. She didn't think Knight was interested in the family, but still. Is that what you're worried about? Knight shrugged. Personally, I dislike the Zulks. But the rule of the Phantom Troop is strength above all. If Kalito can find a Nen exorcist before us, I'll consider his request fairly. Maki bit her lip and watched Knight vanish into the console, his face unreadable. She realized she'd been overthinking it. Like Krollo, Knight could separate logic from emotion. Perhaps only a leader like that could guide such an unruly band forward. Thinking that, she smiled faintly. Game rules times agreement times knowledge. As soon as he opened his eyes, Knight was in a cold, dim room. He activated Gyo immediately. Sure enough, both the walls and the mechanical door were Nen constructed. As he stepped forward, the door opened. At the far end, a girl sat on a floating chair, wearing a mechanical headset. She looked coldly at the new arrival. Knight smiled and approached slowly. The girl offered a professional smile and said, "Welcome to Greed Island. Are you Knight?" Yes. To enter the game, he had registered using his real name. Would you like a tutorial on the game's rules? The girl asked. Of course, Knight replied politely. Then, please pay attention. The girl began reciting the most basic rules of Greed Island, one by one. These are just the basics. For further details, explore them inside the game. You may now proceed through that door. A door opened in the wall beside her. Knight nodded to the girl and walked through. What greeted him was, Chapter 85 was missing. So, Chapter 86-. Everyone. Kalito, come out. As he spoke, a short-haired girl in an elaborate kimono stepped from beneath a tree's shade and said calmly, I am Kalito Zoldyck. Please guide me. He's really a boy. Finks exclaimed. Not only him, Knight also had trouble connecting the image of this fifth Zoldyck child to a boy. But if he could find a Nen remover, then so what? The troop already had the mummy, Sadako, the pharaoh, the barbarian. What was one more crossdresser? Illumi said he'd help us find someone if we agreed to let Kalito join the troop. But we still follow our rules, 2/3 of the members must approve. He looked at Kalito and asked, do you agree to that? The feminine-looking boy nodded. I do. Then let's leave it at that. Knight changed topics. We came to this island looking for a Nen exorcist. After a few days of observation and intelligence gathering, I believe that the reward for clearing this game is the ability to take a number of cards into the real world. Bringing cards into reality. Yes. Since this is a real island, and the cards are created using Nen, they can be brought out. But just clearing stages might not get us enough cards or the variety we want, Knight continued. We'll have to wait until Krollo and Pakanoda are freed from their Nen restrictions to figure out how to collect and extract them. The spiders had no objections. All right. Maki and I will go with Kalito to search for a Nen exorcist. Phaeton, you and Finks continue to play the game, rob anyone you can. Pakanoda, Cordopi, team up with Shizuku and Franklin to play and gather intel. Don't worry about how many cards you collect. Your job is reconnaissance. If you encounter the two kids we held temporarily before, ignore them. Knight added. He had installed control chips on them when posing as Pakanoda for the hostage exchange. They posed no threat. Yes, Captain. The troop split up and acted accordingly. A few days later, Gon and Killua encountered Phaeton and Finks, learning from Finks' blunt words that the troop was seeking a Nen exorcist, leading to the events previously seen. Now, let's turn back time. Dash in the real world. After hanging up the phone, Kurapika walked the streets in a daze, feeling deeply unsettled. Suddenly, a man came up behind him and tapped his shoulder. Who is it? Reflexes honed by recent threats kicked in. Without looking, Kurapika slammed his elbow back and clenched his other fist, ready to strike. It's me, Kurapika. The voice was familiar. It's Master. Kurapika froze. The middle-aged man with a flat top and small mustache before him could only be his nen teacher, Kashito. "Yes, Kurapika, it's me." Kashito looked at him solemnly. "It's only been a few months. What happened to you?" "Master." Kurapika struggled to explain what had happened these past months. But Kashito saw through it. "You've already gone after the spiders, haven't you?" "Yes. Yes. But..." Kurapika's eyes, hidden behind contacts, turned crimson. I suspect there's more to what happened back then. I don't know what to do." The memory of Krillow's expressionless face haunted him. Kashito rested his hands on his shoulders. "Don't panic, Kurapika. This isn't the place to talk. Come back to my temporary residence." "You live here, master?" Kurapika asked faintly. "Yes, due to some business," Kashito replied, gently guiding him away. "Master," Kurapika whispered. "What is it, Kurapika?" Kashito asked, not hearing him clearly. "I'm so tired. So tired." His friends all had their paths. Gon was pushing himself to find his father. Killua was struggling to break free from his assassin fate. Leorio was likely studying medicine. Melody was chasing the other holders of the Dark Sonata to destroy the cursed music. It was all good. It meant they didn't need to follow him down this long, dangerous road of revenge. The spiders had already marked him. He might be dragged deeper into conflicts with the underworld and the Hunter Association. He absolutely didn't want to endanger his friends. So no matter how exhausted he was, no matter how ready to collapse, Kurapika had to keep walking this path alone. Author's note: even if I mention characters you dislike, they all have a role in the story, so please bear with it. Kashito had a small apartment in Kadori City. As a bounty hunter, he often visited this infamous dark city to track criminals or buy half-true intel from the underworld bar Kaiwa. He hadn't expected to run into Kurapika, his former student, in this dangerous place. Kashito had always felt conflicted about this disciple. Although he'd volunteered to teach Kurapika Nen after he passed the hunter exam, there were things he couldn't, or wouldn't, say at the time. But now, 3 months later, his once principled student had reappeared in Kadori, looking utterly transformed. Gon was the innocent boy who always wore the Korta clan's traditional garb with pride. Now, he was almost unrecognizable. If Kashito hadn't been so familiar with Kurapika's Nen, he might have dismissed him as a stranger. A cup of hot water steamed from the kitchen. The blond youth had taken off his black cloak and was wearing a tight-fitting combat suit with a corset. His knees and elbows were protected by soft but durable leather guards. His short boots were made from the same material. Their wear and tear showed he had been through many battles. Yet now he sat blankly on the sofa, not leaning back, hunched slightly forward, hands clasped between his knees, head bowed. His messy blonde hair obscured his face. With the lights off, he sat in shadow, appearing somber and broken. "Kurapika, would you like some water?" Kashito asked, flipping the light switch. As light filled the room, Kurapika's body tensed reflexively. "No," Kashito heard him reply in a low, hollow voice. "Master, I don't want water." I. Kashito, sensing something was very wrong, quickly set the cup on the table and sat beside him. He placed a steady hand on Kurapika's shoulder. "Don't panic, Kurapika. You're safe here. Take time to calm your heart." "No," Kurapika whispered. "There's no time. The world has given me too little time. I don't have any left." Chapter 87-. I have no more time to become stronger, and no more time to avenge the Korta clan. Kurapika's voice started soft but ended in a near roar, a voice filled with desperation, helplessness, and unwavering determination. "Kurapika, calm down." Kashito looked at his disciple, no, at the broken young man before him, and what he felt couldn't even be called heartbreak. But how was he supposed to comfort him? Kurapika wasn't weak-hearted. He had simply never truly faced the world's darkness. Now, before his Nen teacher, everything he had been holding in burst forth. And so, by nightfall, the red of the Kurta eyes slowly faded, returning to their calm blue. He looked up and said, "Master, I'm sorry for worrying you." Kashido sighed. The hatred Kurapika carried was far too heavy. That hatred would one day turn him into a monster. That was why Kashido had warned him against pursuing revenge, but still, Kurapika had chosen that path. "You really went after the spiders?" "Yes. Yes." The prelude to vengeance had already begun. How could Kashido stop what came next? Thinking of this, Kashido asked, "Kurapika, you said you went after the spiders, so?" "I killed one," Kurapika said, unaware that Uvogin had survived, "and I sealed the Nen of the Phantom Troops leader. But my friends told me they're already searching for a Nen remover." At this, a bitter smile crossed his lips. "They also said the Kurta clan massacre was instigated by someone else." Kurapika's deep blue eyes locked on his teacher. "Master. They said the Hunter Association was involved." His gaze pleaded with Kashido to tell him it wasn't true. But Kashido couldn't. He sighed and answered solemnly, "So that's what broke you, Kurapika. I want to say it isn't true, but after these past months, you must know the association isn't a beacon of justice. It's a massive machine built to shield the actions of those with power. Most hunters don't commit crimes or murder innocents, but they also don't value normal lives. In their eyes, those with Nen live in a different world. Whether it's for research, fame, or money, there's little they won't do." "So," Kurapika cried, "you mean the Hunter Association really was involved? Then why didn't they come for me too?" "Because the one leading the project resigned," Kashido answered with visible discomfort. "That's it. That's the reason." He was referring to Leorio, no, to Leo, the former vice-chairman. Does anyone still remember him? Kurapika was stunned by the absurdity of the explanation. So, the Kurta clan was annihilated simply because someone proposed a research topic? "I remember," Uvogin had said, "we caught a few and sent them to the association's research lab." Kurapika replayed those words over and over in his head. If Kashido said it was true, then Uvogin hadn't been lying. Maybe some Kurta survivor still lived. But how did his teacher know? A secret like this shouldn't be common knowledge. Alarmed, Kurapika turned and asked, "Master, how do you know this?" Kashido could only smile bitterly. Though now a bounty hunter, 3 years ago he had been a chimera beast researcher. He had spent nearly 8 years in the secret lab, until the day a group of Kurta clan members were brought in. Despite being able to dissect fantastical and demonic creatures without flinching, Kashido had recoiled when asked to experiment on beings that looked exactly like himself. Thankfully, he had influential friends in the association who helped him leave quietly. But he had no power to stop Leo's Red Eyes research project. Even now, he couldn't forget the terrified, desperate eyes of those Kurta children, kids younger than Kurapika, who haunted his memory. "It's really true?" Kurapika whispered. The numbness in his heart gave way to a pounding dread. After a long silence, Kashido heard him ask, "Master, can you take me there?" There? Did he mean the Hunter Association's research lab? "All right, Kurapika." Though it would be difficult, Kashido couldn't refuse. As you all know, Togashi is notorious for hiatuses and unfinished arcs. Many of his characters appear once, then vanish. In the Greed Island and Chimera Ant arcs, only 2 of the 4 protagonists had major roles. Now we have the 12 Zodiacs and the Dark Continent, but who knows when it will end. As the author of this story, I can't wait years. So I've created my own outline based on prior foreshadowing in characters who only briefly appeared in canon. I can reveal one thing for now: the Dark Continent will appear, and Kurapika will descend into darkness. But that's all I'll say, you'll have to wait and see the rest. The lab where Kashito had once worked was located in a valley named Klondi, 5 kilometers from the Hunter Association's main headquarters. The location was highly secret. Entry required researcher credentials and multiple security verifications. Even within the association, most staff had only heard rumors of its existence. Luckily, Kashito had once been a formal researcher there. After Leo was removed, several of his friends had asked if he wanted to return. That gave him a valid reason to enter. As Kurapika was his disciple, they encountered few obstacles. "Kashito, you're back." As they arrived, a white-coated middle-aged researcher greeted him. "Cine, it's you." Kashito recognized his former colleague. "Yes. I decided to return. I spent years here. If it weren't for that incident, I'd never have left." "Well, Kashito, I get it. But you know we researchers live to explore the unknown. Even hospitals run human trials," said Cine. For a man focused solely on research, sentiment was irrelevant. Kashito could stomach it, but Kurapika behind him clenched every muscle, barely restraining himself from killing the indifferent man. Seeing this, Kashito quickly changed the subject. "Anyway, it's in the past. Oh, Nikunla told me the project was halted after Leo resigned. Are the Cortas still in the lab? Hey hunters. Quick break. Hope you're enjoying the fanfic so far. BTW Hisoka is listed as type unknown in official NEN charts. Some say transmutation, others say specialist. But official sources dodge the answer. Pretty cool. Now let's keep going." Chapter 88-. This question immediately drew Kurapika's attention, and he listened intently. "I don't know the details. You know I specialize in plant research," said Cine. "But I've heard that a few people obsessed with the red eyes haven't given up. They supposedly established a separate research facility outside Vanderby focused solely on that subject. That's all I know." Cine patted Kashito on the shoulder. "So, when are you officially rejoining the lab?" Kashito hadn't actually filed any return paperwork, he was only using his former position as a cover to investigate. Hence Cine's curiosity. "Oh, I'm training my apprentice these days. Not ideal for lab work. Maybe in a few more days," Kashito replied. "Fair enough. You used to work like a maniac. Take care, I've got an assistant waiting." Cine waved goodbye and walked off. Vanderby City? Kashito turned and saw the light of determination in Kurapika's eyes. He could only sigh. Meanwhile, in Greed Island, Kalito had found the Nen exorcist. "That's him," Kalito said calmly, pointing to a cloaked man dining at a restaurant about 200 meters away. "Good," said Knight, trusting the youngest Zoldyck. "When he comes out, we'll approach. Maki, ask Phaeton to bring some escape cards. Also, tell Pakanoda to come." "Yes," replied the purple-haired woman. Yabangani had entered Greed Island to escape an enemy. He'd heard that clearing the game yielded great rewards. However, he was deceived by the bomber, who not only exploited him but planted a time bomb in him. Luckily, as a Nen remover, Yabangani summoned a mind beast that devoured the bomb. From then on, he stayed hidden, yet trouble still found him. "I heard you can remove Nen." The blonde, baby-faced youth smiled sweetly. Innocent as he seemed, the men and women behind him looked anything but harmless. "Yes." Yabangani didn't dare lie. This man knew about his abilities. And if they hadn't killed him outright, it could only mean they wanted his help. "Well, you can guess why I'm here," said Knight, eyes narrowing. "Two of my friends are afflicted. I need them cleansed." There was no way to refuse. Faced with people whose aura reeked of blood and malice, Yabangani swallowed hard. "Can I make a request?" "Go ahead," Knight said with a faint smile. He preferred voluntary cooperation. Forced help often caused complications. Breathing easier, Yabangani carefully removed his cloak, revealing a massive, grotesque beast wrapped around him. "What the hell is that?" Finks interrupted. "My ability," said Yabangani, "lets me borrow the power of forest spirits. I combine it with my own conjuration to create a mind beast that devours Nen. But once the Nen is removed, this beast remains attached, unless I kill the person who placed the Nen." He looked at Knight solemnly. "I need you to help me capture the bomber. So I can kill him." "What? So if Krollo wants full exorcism, he must kill Kurapika? But the Avenger seems to be cooperating now. Should they?" A flurry of thoughts raced through Knight's mind. But on the surface, he remained unreadable. "That's a reasonable condition. I accept. But you need to provide us with clues about the bomber. Pakanoda," he called the blonde woman behind him, "check him." Pakanoda nodded, approached Yabangani, placed her hand on his shoulder, and read his memories, then used a memory bullet to share them with the others. "Humph, easy," scoffed Phaeton. "He needs physical contact and a keyword to plant bombs. I'll slice him to pieces before he gets close." "Good. Then I leave it to you, Phaeton. He has 3 accomplices. Finks, Franklin, Maki, eliminate them too," said Knight casually. The ease with which he handed down death sentences stunned Yabangani. These were the people who had made top Nen users despair, yet they were treated as nothing by this man. Just who were they? "All right." Knight turned back to Yabangani, smiling warmly. "You'll come with me. We'll begin once they bring the bomber back." But Yabangani didn't believe that smile for a second. This young man hadn't released a trace of malice, but could command monsters. He nodded meekly. Though Kashido felt the plan was rushed, Kurapika was desperate. So they boarded a train to Vanderby that day. Since Cine hadn't given Kashido an exact address, he didn't know it. They searched based on the known affiliations of former Red Eye researchers. After 3 days, they struck gold. "It's under the Lumindi Foundation?" Kurapika exclaimed. The Lumindi group was second only to the Francis Wen family. Most of their work was in consumer goods. The current CEO had a reputation for philanthropy, donating heavily to social welfare. That such a man funded human experimentation was shocking. Kashido understood his students' outrage. "We can't worry about that now. Tonight's mission comes first." Kurapika nodded grimly. That night, the Lumindi Foundation's lab, officially researching new products, sat in an industrial zone outside Vanderby. Its grounds were vast, partly legitimate, partly a front for human testing. After work hours, spotting the true lab wasn't difficult, especially for a Nen user. A thin Nen barrier coated the exterior. Using Gyo, one could spot the alarm systems embedded in the walls. "Be careful," Kashido warned. "There's at least one strong Nen user here." Kurapika, still under Nen restriction, would have no defense. Kurapika nodded. He knew his limitations. "Let's go," Kashido whispered. Activating his stealth ability, he darted to a weak point in the perimeter. Kurapika followed closely. Inside, the lab was dim and silent. Moonlight spilled across sterile white walls and cold steel doors. Kashido, intimately familiar with the layout, led Kurapika to the security room. A young technician napped inside. Without hesitation, Kashido slipped in and knocked him unconscious with a precise chop. Turning to Kurapika, he said, "Check the monitors. See what's happening in the other sections." Chapter 89-. "What's the situation?" Kurapika grunted, then walked to a large display screen showing surveillance feeds from various locations in the laboratory. He examined them one by one, until his pupils contracted sharply and his clenched fists trembled, veins bulging across his skin. "Master, are those my people?" His voice was dazed, his vision blurred. His knees buckled. Strength left him entirely. "What did you see?" Kashido rushed over and scanned the monitor. His sharp eyes soon located a room marked as a specimen storage chamber. Inside, not only were there more than a dozen pairs of fiery red eyes, but several Kurta clan corpses, both old and young. The bodies were preserved upright in tall glass cylinders, nude, their eye sockets empty, their skin pale and bloated. They looked like they were screaming, demanding justice. "This room is listed as a specimen archive," Kashido said quietly, seeing Kurapika shaking uncontrollably. "I want to see for myself," Kurapika said in a voice like a ghost's whisper. "I'll lead the way," Kashido sighed and turned. Behind him, the blond boy's heavy footsteps fell like thunder against his heart. The storage room was colder than the rest of the facility. Rows of sterile tables and glass tanks filled the space. Kashido opened the door, stood silently, and stepped aside. He didn't want to disturb the boy grieving his people, even if they were already lost to the abyss. Kurapika stepped inside. The first thing he saw were the vivid red eyes suspended in preservative fluid. Roughly 20 pairs. Some were brilliantly colored, others faded and dull. He noted the date labels on the containers, some as recent as 5 years ago, some over 20. The rarer the beast, the more sought after it is. The same applies to the scarlet eyes. The cold words of that black aura man echoed in his mind, worsening the pain. The massacre of the Kurta wasn't solely the Phantom Troops' doing, it was a centuries-old curse. Their enemies were all who craved the red eyes. Kurapika clutched his chest. He remembered the restriction he placed on himself: he could only use Nen to kill Phantom Troop members, or he would die. But now he realized. He had more enemies than he ever imagined. He finally understood why Kashido had urged him to abandon vengeance. Alone, he could never defeat everyone drawn to the scarlet eyes. He could never stop the cycle. Bang! 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 "Kurapika, get down!" Kashido's voice snapped him back. He dove, rolled across the floor, and slipped between two tables before springing up. Dust filled the air, part of the wall had collapsed. Through the debris, two figures emerged, one hulking brute and another in a wheelchair. Kashido, kneeling below a wall vent, clutched a bleeding hand. His right leg was deeply slashed. He stared tensely at the intruders. "Well, look what we found, 2 rats," said the man in the wheelchair. Kurapika, eyes adjusting to the dim light, saw the man's gaunt face, twisted with age and malice. His legs were withered, confined to the wheelchair. But his eyes, those frightened Kurapika more than any Phantom Troop member. For the first time, he truly felt helpless before another person's evil. "Kill them," the old man ordered. The brute didn't speak, he launched an attack on Kashido. Wounded, Kashido barely managed to parry. Kurapika clenched his jaw and charged the old man. He was the one giving the orders. "Stop," the old man said softly. And Kurapika froze. His body wouldn't obey him. His crimson eyes widened in terror. He could only hear his teachers scream. You're also one of the Kurta?" Yabangani stared in horror at the mangled body tossed before him by the masked short man. He couldn't believe this was Genthru, the bomber, infamous for killing hundreds. "If you don't believe it," said Knight, "kill him again. You said the curse only lifts if you kill the Nen user yourself." He pointed at the worm-like creature on Yabangani's body. "So prove it." Yabangani shivered at the baby-faced youth's casual tone. To him, killing was like plucking a flower, devoid of guilt. "Don't look at me like that," Knight warned, his smile fading. "I get annoyed when people stare at me rudely." Since replacing Krilo as leader, Knight no longer bothered hiding his darker moods. Yabangani quickly looked away, trembling. He raised a stick with Nen and struck the mutilated body, ending the life of the already broken Genthru. The parasite on Yabangani began writhing. Moments later, it curled into a dark mass and vanished. "It's really gone," Shizuku exclaimed. Knight turned to Phaeton. How many escape cards did you find? Only 5, Phaeton replied. 5 was enough, 1 each for Knight, Pakinoda, Yabengani, and Kalito, who hadn't officially joined the troop but acted as an intermediary. Give me 4. We might be gone more than 7 days after we leave. During that time, your mission is to collect more spell cards and monitor the game's progress, Knight instructed. Anyone who failed to re-enter within 7 days would be permanently locked out. He expected Krilo would want access again and might need another console. Phaeton handed over the cards. The 4 immediately activated them and vanished. Their destination, Knight's villa in Yorknu. The first thing they did was call Illumi to arrange a meeting time and place. My powers work best in forests, said Yabengani. Knight immediately had an idea. We'll meet in the Ganon forest in the Republic of Saval. Wait for us in the nearby town of Sicily. Understood, said Illumi flatly over the phone. Knight hung up. Let's go, he told the others. Travel from Yorknu to Saval took 2 days by airship. During the journey, Knight, who had been trapped in Greed Island for over a month, used the time to catch up on unfinished business. As soon as they boarded, he retreated to his private cabin and opened his laptop. Pakinoda was used to this and took on guard duty. Kalito, still not a full-fledged troop member, sat quietly in the back. Chapter 90-. She moved like an exquisite doll. Yabengani also sat obediently, silently praying for this deal to be over quickly, so he could escape from these dangerous people. Huh? Knight, absorbed in his laptop, made a low noise of surprise. In the span of a month, his inbox had flooded with messages, many from the Francis Wen family and Clinda Lee, who now controlled 2/3 of the underworld. A large portion came from spies embedded in the Hunter Association. The young and promising Pariston, now vice-chairman of the Hunter Association, had been elevated after Leo was ousted. An ambitious schemer, Pariston was partially restrained by underworld forces due to his prior heavy-handed tactics. Despite efforts to rebrand himself, his reputation hadn't recovered. Still, Knight hadn't expected this. The Hunter Association had always been a high-value target for the underworld. Numerous plants had been placed within, some at very deep levels. Clinda, well aware that groups like the Phantom Troop had no regard for ordinary lives, chose to feed information to Knight as long as they weren't antagonized. This time, the topic was Pariston. How interesting. The 12 earthly branches. Knight murmured. The Hunter Association was chaotic, but he wasn't particularly interested in anything unrelated to the Phantom Troop. After 2 days of travel, the 4 arrived in a city near the capital of the Republic of Saval, and after several more transfers, they reached Sicily. That night, Knight received a call from Illumi, confirming their arrival. I've arranged for the meeting tomorrow, Knight said calmly. Kalito, you'll escort Yabengani. Contact me immediately once the exorcism is done. The cross-dressed boy nodded slightly. Understood. Knight turned his gaze toward Yabengani, who tensed under the stare. I expect you to take this exorcism seriously. No one wants to see it fail. The tone was grave. Though Yabengani couldn't discern any overt threat, he knew that failure meant serious consequences. He stammered, I'll do my best. Good, Knight nodded. Then get some rest. He dismissed them. Left alone, Knight leaned against the wooden windowsill of the rustic inn. He stared at the bright moon above, expressionless. Tomorrow, he would finally see him again. Right now, Krilo must be waiting nearby. Was he anxious too? At that thought, Knight smiled faintly and let all else fade. The next morning, Kalito and Yabengani departed Sicily, heading into the deep Ganon forest, where a sacred banyan tree, reputed to have birthed the forest, stood. Since Yabengani's nen required the aid of natural spirits, the more vigorous the environment, the greater the exorcism's success rate. Knight and Pakinoda followed about an hour later. Exorcisms didn't usually take long, so they hoped to arrive as Krilo completed his Nen restoration. Yabengani, following the small framed Kalito, arrived within an hour. Under the ancient banyan, so massive it would take over a dozen people to encircle, stood two men. The one in front, tall with long, straight hair, bore a delicate but unreadable face. He exuded an oppressive aura. The second, seated on a thick root, had black hair and dark eyes. His gaze brushed over Kalito briefly, then fixed on Yabengani. Is he the one I'm supposed to help? Yabengani clenched his fists. The pressure this man radiated was immense. Kalito stepped forward. Brother. The delicate man replied calmly, Kalito, you're here. So this is the exorcist? Yabengani bowed quickly. Yes, I'm Yabengani. Krilo stood and approached, smiling gently as he offered his hand. Hello. I'm Krilo Lucilfer, the one you'll be helping. Hello. Yabengani hadn't expected such a calm, scholarly demeanor from someone so fearsome. He felt disarmed and unsure how to respond. Krilo smiled. Shall we begin? Are you ready? You may begin now, Yabengani said. But before I start, I must know where the Nen has been implanted. Still smiling, Krilo placed his hand on his chest. Here. The heart? Yabengani grew solemn. He lit a fire in a clearing, chanted softly, and rubbed Krilo's chest with a Nen-infused branch. After several minutes, he tossed a doll-like charm into the flames. A monstrous pillar of black and blood-colored flame erupted. From within, a grotesque beast, twice the size of Yabengani's usual exorcism creature, crawled forth. Startled, Yabengani glanced at Krilo. Despite the beast's terrifying form, the man remained composed. The Nen beast raised its head and plunged a slender mouth into Krilo's chest, drawing out the cursed energy. The Zoldyck brothers watching nearby gasped quietly. Yet Krilo stood still, unfazed. It was in that moment Yabengani realized, this man wasn't kind, he simply didn't value his life, nor anyone else's. In 2 to 3 minutes, the monstrous creature had fully devoured the Nen. It burped, then began coiling around Krilo's body. What is that? Krilo asked. The exorcism is only half complete, Yabengani explained. To make it vanish, you must kill the one who cast the Nen. I see. Krilo's body flared with 10, and a familiar book marked with a bloody handprint appeared. Then. I can use Nen again. He flipped to a page. A white light appeared in his palm. He pressed it against the creature, and it vanished into smoke. Yabengani gaped. What kind of ability could even erase spiritual residue? There's always something bizarre in your book, a voice called from the woods. Knight and Pakanoda emerged. How do you feel, Krilo? Knight asked. I'm fine, Krilo answered with a faint smile. Although the beast looked formidable. But in the end, it was easy to dispel. His tone was light, but there was a hint of wariness. The atmosphere turned tense. Kalito bit his lip, body tensing. His position was delicate, he had joined the Phantom Troop only after Knight became its leader. His motives weren't simple, and now it was clear, these two leaders might not fully trust each other. He looked helplessly at the brother he respected most, silently hoping for some guidance. Chapter 91. Parker, who was standing behind the Knight, was in a dilemma. She could agree to let the Knight become the leader when the troop temporarily lost Krilo, but when the two of them appeared together, her heart was inevitably biased towards Krilo. However, this bias was accompanied by strong personal emotions, so reason told her that it was best not to interrupt. Illumi, who was asked for help by Kalito, did not intend to get involved. Even though he was a little interested in the relationship between the two, these were internal issues of the Phantom Troop, and he, as an outsider, could just watch the show. However, the most innocent Abangan beside him was somewhat affected. The atmosphere in the scene was inexplicably cryptic, which made him feel a little scared. But the knight turned the topic to him. Abangan, are you sure you can remove a spell of that level today? Yes, it's a bit difficult. Abangan didn't dare to lie. The nen within Krillow's body was the strongest and most malicious he had ever seen. If he were to remove a similar nen again, he might need 2 days of rest before he could do it. Is that so? Then we have to wait 2 days. The knight was not in a hurry. The restriction on Pakunoda was not harsh, it was just to avoid being limited in case they had to fight Gon and Killua in the future. Abangan nodded quickly. Well, let's go back to Soweto first, the knight decided. Illumi opened his eyes with a blank expression and said, Mr. Knight, our commission has ended. I'll send the list of this period to your phone. I hope you can transfer the commission fee to my account as soon as possible. Of course, Mr. Illumi, the knight replied. Illumi simply nodded, turned around, and quickly disappeared into the woods. Knight, Krillo suddenly spoke. What, Krillo? Aren't there some things you should explain to me? Krillo still wore that gentle expression, and his unchanging look was even more terrifying than Illumi's usual expressionless face. It seems that I'm the leader now. The knight tilted his head expressionlessly and looked at Krillo. Suddenly, a dazzling smile appeared on his face. But if Krillo wants to know, of course I'll tell you everything I know. Hey, Krillo laughed softly, shook his head, and said, You're right, you're the leader of the Phantom Troop now, and you don't need to tell me everything. But I'm very happy that you said that. His dark eyes stared at the knight's face, and the real smile at the corner of his eyes immediately broke the stagnant atmosphere. The knight put a hand on Krillo's shoulder and said, I'm happy too, Krillo. He suddenly raised his voice. Let's go. If we go back early, we can still catch the hotel's lunch. You don't know, the chef at that hotel has a really delicious dish, and they only serve 50 portions every day at noon. If you're late, you won't get any. He spoke hurriedly, like a 17 or 18-year-old energetic boy, and ran off, pulling Krillo with him. Without thinking, Pakunoda started to chase after them, and Kalito followed without saying a word. Abangan ran at the back, feeling uneasy. The Phantom Troop. Is that really the Phantom Troop? In some comments, they always imagine that after the knight and Krillo reunite, Krillo would do something to the knight. But in my opinion, why should Krillo do anything to the knight? Did the knight plot against him? Krillo has always known betrayal was a possibility. Did the knight take Krillo's position as leader? No, even if Krillo values the troop the most, he doesn't care about the position itself. As long as someone capable takes on the responsibility, Krillo won't object. As for harming the troop's interests? Please. Everything was within the knight's calculations. If a problem like that had arisen, then the knight would not have acted. So why would Krillo be angry? He's not someone who places much weight on emotions. In the anime, he has almost no personal preferences for people. He has things he likes, like ancient books, but even Hisoka said he's fickle. Even if he had divined that Hisoka had betrayed the secrets of the moons, he would ignore it, because the dead Uvogin is just dead. There's no need to care. Ha, you say he has feelings for the knight? Yes, this article is about feelings. But Krillo never wanted to suppress the knight. I remember writing in one of the first chapters something like Krillo saying, the position of the leader can also be challenged. So the knight successfully challenged Krillo and became leader. And Krillo was actually happy, because the stronger the person he favors becomes, the better it is for the whole team. Ahem, please forgive me for rambling today. New members times honesty times survivors from outer space. Good morning. The knight walked down the stairs and greeted the 2 people already sitting in the hotel restaurant. He yawned and looked a little sleepy. Krillo followed behind him, with a faint shadow under his eyes. Good morning, Kalito replied politely. Pakunoda just nodded. She didn't know how to address the knight in front of Krillo, nor did she dare call Krillo by name directly. Yesterday, the knight had asked Abangan to chant for her. As expected, Kurlo's skill hunter had gained an additional ability. Because of some joy, Night in Kurlo's room had been noisy for a long time. Pakanota, Maki isn't here. Tattoo Kalito's number later and explained the rules of the troop to him. Kurlo and I have something to talk about, the Knight said after breakfast. He and Kurlo had discussed at length about Kalito joining the Phantom Troop. Kalito was unlike their previous members who were rootless wanderers. He was, first and foremost, a Zoldyck. The advantage of letting him join was potential cooperation with the Zoldyck family. If conflict arose in the future, both sides would have to consider more factors. The disadvantage was that future plans would require more caution. But overall, the advantages outweighed the risks. Kurlo persuaded the Knight, who had a grudge against the Zoldyck family, to allow Kalito to officially join. Yes. The Knight turned to look at the black-haired man who had also set down his cutlery and asked, "Where do you think is a good place?" "That place from yesterday was nice," said Kurlo. "Okay then." The place Kurlo referred to was the large banyan tree. When they arrived, neither of them spoke. They looked at each other for about 10 minutes before the Knight said, "I can tell you those things. But Kurlo, the prerequisite is that you must completely trust me." A powerful aura surged from the Knight's body as he slowly extended his right hand toward Kurlo, staring and waiting. "Complete trust? Is it one-sided or mutual? Since you're using such a serious tone, it must be mutual, right?" Kurlo analyzed with a soft snort, but his right hand took the Knight's without hesitation. In an instant, their auras expanded. Fierce energy burst around them, stirring chaotic currents that clashed, pressed, merged, and entangled. Kurlo raised an eyebrow slightly, looking surprised at the two halos floating around the Knight. "He's dual-natured. So this ability must be." The vision came and went quickly. Within a minute or two, the Knight withdrew his hand. Kurlo felt something extra within his body, and a delighted smile played on his lips. "As you saw, I have two systems, one is manipulation, the other is specialization," the Knight said slowly. "The nature of my specialization is assimilation and sharing." A huge black curtain suddenly appeared in his hand, very similar to the bandit's secret that Kurlo used, but his was black while Kurlo's was red. "This is David's magic cloth. It can borrow part of another person's body and transform into an identical individual for a period of time. If the person is a Nen user, you can use their ability when your Nen is high enough." The Knight quickly retracted the black curtain. "And the one just now, I named it Well of Common Origin. Its function is to make me and the person I use it on share the same power." Chapter 92 Object Sharing Ability and Telekinesis. At this point, a book with the same cover as Kurlo's bandit's secret appeared in Knight's hand. Knight flipped through it slightly, and the pages inside were all blank. He would only get Kurlo's ability, but it would be impossible to copy Kurlo's bandit's secret after stealing other people's abilities. Share? Kurlo now understood what the extra power in his body was. He grasped at the air, and the black curtain that had just appeared in Knight's hand materialized in his grasp. People with special qualities have abilities that are auxiliary. They need to borrow adjacent mind-type Nen users to function. Kurlo's ability is borrowing, while Pakanota's is reading and transmitting, both relying on materialized objects to work. Ability, Well of Oneness. Effect, share telekinesis and abilities with others. Both parties can borrow each other's telekinesis, but the amount cannot exceed 2/3 of the borrower's strength. Sharing abilities also establishes a very close connection. Restrictions, the sharer must have complete trust in the ability owner, the difference in strength between the two must not exceed 10%, the ability owner can activate this only once, meaning only one sharing target can be chosen. It turns out he met the chain user when he borrowed someone else's identity. Kurlo had suspected Knight had encountered Kurapika before, and this confirmed it. Sure enough, Knight said, I occasionally saw Hisoka come into contact with the chain user before, and I recognized him as an orphan of the Kuruda tribe, so I installed a control chip on him in advance. The incident with Yorknu was inevitable. Krilo, when you went out, you took Kordapi to explore the chain user's location, you took Pakanoda to check prisoner intel, you took Nobunaga just to manage morale. If you'd swapped Maki for Phaeton, subsequent events might have been different. Indeed, Krilo had been too confident. His entourage had been largely support. Though Nobunaga's sword was fast, his reflexes were far beneath Phaeton or Finks. Knight later analyzed the defeat and found their greatest mistake was underestimating the enemy. I was careless. Krilo admitted readily. Knight, you were right. A true leader needs reminders of their flaws. Krilo wasn't perfect, he needed that. Okay then, Krilo, let's move on. The knight shook his head. The answer to your question that day is simple. The restraint on your body has lessened because the chain user's self-restraint has been removed. Sounds like a lot happened? Knight, tell me everything. Krilo raised an eyebrow. Gladly. I've been thinking about this lately. The knight smiled. Perspective shift to Kurapika. Kurapika hugged himself tightly, shivering as though in the coldest snow. This was the second day in the small room. 2 nights without sleep had left him haggard. His blonde hair was dull, and his face was ashen. His blue eyes were frozen, lifeless. Deep shadows lay under them, and his cracked, bleeding lips spoke of neglect. He was not imprisoned or tortured, but the physical and psychological toll was brutal. The wheelchair wheel stopped outside Kurapika's door, and an old voice sounded, Kurapika, still clueless, huh? How stupid. Stupid. The blonde boy murmured. Am I stupid? I've lived over 10 years, and someone says the Kuruda aren't human, they're survivors from outer space. I'm not pure human, but descend from another continent Warcraft beings. You call me stupid? You're wrong, I'm going crazy. Craze, why? He screamed in hysteria. The old man in the wheelchair snorted, if you can't recognize yourself, then what can be said? Come, I'll show you proof. With that, the attendant pushed the chair down a right-hand passage. Kurapika paused, then followed, desperate to see this proof. The elder Kuruda, Salman, had his aide wheel him into a lab twice the size of the specimen room. Kurapika peered inside and felt his scalp tingle. Salman turned to him with cold, serpentine eyes. Kurapika almost bit his lip, then stepped in. The lab was filled with specimens. Unlike the previous room, containing only Kuruda remains, here were samples of many races and body parts. The first 2 rows displayed human faces, white, yellow, black, even oddly green or purple, eyes dull, frozen expressions, sealed in preserving fluid. It was more disturbing than the red-eyed Kuruda samples. In the back lay trays of organs in tissues, skin slices, hearts, lungs, hair, intestines, and blood vessels. Each jar was labeled with race, part, location collected. Chilling. What is this? Did you bring me just to see body parts? Kurapika asked. Salman ignored him. He guided Kurapika to a desk, then switched on a computer. 6 years ago, I devoted myself to genetic research. Because it was controversial, it took me 4 years to gather samples from all races, Salman said as he typed. 6 years ago? You knew the Kuruda tribe was wiped out, why didn't you stop it? Kurapika shot back. That would have required me to try stopping them, Salman said coldly. Young man, don't speak to your elder like that. Kurapika clenched his fists, fighting the urge to argue. He was relieved to discover another red-eyed member of his tribe, but that person wasn't friendly. He was cold, emotionless. Their first meeting had been tense. Kurapika felt no kinship, or mercy, in him. Yes, sorry, sir. Kurapika replied, subdued. Humph, I'm not your enemy. Salman dismissed Kurapika's guilt. In his eyes, emotion was wasteful. I couldn't stop those killers because I was one of them. What? You, Kurapika gasped. Salmon was captured too. Then how did he? Salmon radiated a sinister presence. 14 years ago, he'd been taken captive, a Kurta of slightly above average ability. He had no defense against Nen users researching psychic phenomena. Because Kuruta blood was valuable, he was spared but held like an animal, blood drawn regularly, parts amputated, but kept alive. In captivity, Salmon awakened telekinesis, his manipulation type Nen, unleashed through his red eyes, allowing him to turn his situation around. He feigned stupidity to lower his captor's guard, and turned those incompetent guards who remained into his puppets. Chapter 93 After hearing a researcher say that the cell structure of the Kuruta people seems to be different from others, he finally found a clear direction in this dark place. He was still a living specimen, and even in a relaxed state, was never allowed to leave or walk around. However, after so many years as an experimental subject, he could no longer walk on his own. 5 years ago, several young Kuruta were brought to the lab. Salmon watched as his people were cruelly treated, yet he was powerless. He buried himself in his research and ignored everything. It wasn't until Leo was pushed out of office more than 3 years ago, and the Institute halted the Red Eye research, transferring all Kuruta specimens to this lab, that Salmon acted. He seized control of the lab using the people he had manipulated, turning it into his own domain. Is this really the case? Kurapika was nearly in a daze. He couldn't fathom how Salmon had endured such an environment for so long. A wave of deep regret surged in him, nearly drowning his mind. Salmon continued, over the years, I've dissected living humans from all over the world, studied their bones and irises, and compared their genetic structures to ours. While our genes are similar, there's a difference of over 40%. I spent more than a year using my puppets to find various magical beasts and extract their genes. I discovered several chains in the Kuruta genome that are structurally similar to those of magical beasts. At this point, Salmon suddenly raised his head. What does this prove? It proves our Kuruta tribe does not originate from this continent. Only in the so-called Dark Continent, the greatest taboo of mankind, the most forbidden zone, the origin of all monsters, could be our homeland. Everyone in this world is foreign to us, we are not the same race. Kurapika was speechless. Salmon's words were too shocking. He looked at the experimental data, comparisons, and conclusions, and felt like his entire worldview had just collapsed. Having not eaten or slept in 2 days, Kurapika collapsed, unconscious. The old man in the wheelchair shook his head and said to his puppet, saying, "Take him back to his room. This is good, he'll be clearer when he wakes up." His voice lingered with cryptic emotion. Perspective shifts back to Night and Krilo. Then, on the second day, Salmon used his controlled personnel to find a Nen exorcist in the Hunter Association to remove the chain user's restriction on him. That's why the effects on Huan Pakanoda also weakened, said Knight. The Dark Continent? I've only heard of it, but know little about it, Krilo mused. He frowned slightly. It's said to be extremely dangerous. Well, Knight scratched his head, it's probably a secret accessible only to the core members of the Hunter Association. It's not in their public records, so I don't know much. Annoying. Krilo rubbed his temples and looked up. But Knight, keep an eye on that Salmon. He'll definitely cause trouble. As long as he doesn't interfere with the spiders, let the Hunter Association handle him. That's right, Krilo. You still need more practice with that ability. Even though both Krilo and Knight were experienced Nen users, neither dared claim full mastery of Well of Common Origin. While its ability to share 2/3 of one's Nen sounded appealing, it required intense cooperation. One mistake could mean injury, or worse. Even revelations about descendants from outer space or the Dark Continent had to wait. And for a training ground? Greed Island was perfect. Full of weak Nen users for cannon fodder, plus valuable intelligence and strong ability cards that could be extracted. September. At that time, the wealthy Bartel had posted a generous bounty, inviting many Nen users into Greed Island to retrieve a specific card. However, according to Phaeton, most newbies were killed by Genthru and his allies right after entering. So Bartel had to have a spare console. Knight tapped away at a keyboard and said this to Krilo, who sat beside him. "Okay, let's go see the rich man tonight," said Krilo. Later that night, on the floor next to the elderly tycoon was his bloodied bodyguard. Bartel, wrapped in a sheet, huddled in the corner of his massive bed, terrified of the phantom troop intruders. He tried to speak, but his voice failed him. "Hey, don't be nervous." Knight patted his shoulder and smiled. "We just need your cooperation." "Pakanoda," he signaled the blonde, hook-nosed spider, "I heard you hired hunters to enter Greed Island to find cards." Bartel stammered, "Why yes. I want my lover to wake up. I heard there's a card in there that can do that." "Okay." Pakanoda spoke up suddenly. Knight looked to Krilo, who had no interest in the man's fate. He nodded, letting Knight handle it. Knight shrugged and said to Pakanoda, "Erase his memory of this event. Killing a well-known figure could attract too much attention, so better not to risk it." Pakanoda erased Bartel's memory and knocked him out gently. Then she and Calito disposed of the bodyguard's corpse and entered a hidden basement, where rows of Greed Island consoles were lined up. "Pakanoda, you and Calito go in first," Krilo said. Pakanoda bit her lip and glanced at Knight, who seemed unaffected by Krilo's order, still smiling. She activated her Nen and vanished. Calito also glanced at them oddly. He had quickly noticed the strong bond between Krilo and Knight. Though surprised, the young Zoldyck kept his expression neutral. He had even secretly called Illumi several times to confirm whether Krilo and Knight were really part of the Phantom Troop. Still, he entered the game without complaint. "Do you have something to say to me?" Knight tilted his head at Krilo. There was a reason he let the others go first. "No," Krilo smiled faintly. "I just feel their presence is a bit of a hindrance." "A hindrance?" Knight blinked, then burst into laughter. "Yeah, they're kind of in the way. Especially at certain times." The two waited half an hour before entering the game. Night had also fallen on Greed Island. The moonlight blanketed the land in silver, serene and quiet. But this stillness was also a time for predators to hunt. "There are quite a few rats here, Knight," Krilo said coolly. "Ah, it's a blessing when experimental subjects come right to your doorstep." Knight turned toward the dark Night King beside him, eyes sparkling. "Yeah, that's true." Krilo nodded. Their eyes locked in mutual understanding. Without another word, they leapt toward the nearest observer. 200 meters, 4 targets. Knight called out as he ran. "Careful, they might try to escape with a flight spell." "Well then, they won't even get the chance to scream." Chapter 94-. He said nonchalantly, grabbing at the air with his right hand. A book with a bloody handprint appeared. He flipped to one of the pages, and in the next second, he and Knight stood before the group. "Teleportation ability?" Knight raised an eyebrow, holding 2 Nen blades, one red, one blue. In combat, he preferred doing things himself, even his manipulation-type abilities were usually secondary in his mind. "You, what are you doing?" shouted a man with a rooster comb hairstyle, panicked. The 2 strangers had appeared out of nowhere. These hunters, who'd planned to ambush someone, had become the prey instead. The reversal stunned them. No one answered. In a flash, Knight's blade cut clean through the man's neck, blood sprayed several meters. A brown-haired man nearby staggered back, trying to scream, but Knight slapped a control chip into his shoulder before he could. The man froze, dazed. "Not much of a challenge, huh?" Knight patted his coat's hem, looking at Krilo, who calmly stood after killing the others. "They're too weak. This kind of practice isn't pushing us at all." "I remember," Krilo said, covering his mouth slightly, "You mentioned some cards in this game that are harder to obtain. Maybe those challenges would suit us better." "That might work. Outside Andonuble's bounty city, there's a creature called Cyclops. Durable unless you attack its eye. And in the plains near Macedora, there are wolves that endlessly multiply unless you kill the alpha. They'd be great to hone our skills on," Knight mused. "Then let's go," said Curlo. Over the next week, ferocious beasts on Greed Island, whether lured in by Nen or hunted, suffered, and players who ventured into certain forests mysteriously vanished. On the wild plains where wolves roamed, two figures dashed between them. Explosions echoed, dust clouds billowed, and intense killing intent spread. Anyone curious wouldn't dare approach. Again. Knight gestured to Curlo, who understood immediately. He flipped to a page in his book. A silver basketball-sized orb of energy crackled in his hand. At the same time, Knight's face paled as half his aura drained, flowing into Curlo. The energy orb tripled in size. Curlo hurled it into the wolf pack like a missile. The resulting explosion scorched a 30 to 40 meter radius, flinging soil, debris, and mangled wolf carcasses skyward. Smoke and dust lingered for minutes. Curlo had deliberately avoided hitting the alpha wolf. Minutes later, more wolves rushed in. He stepped back and gave Knight the lead. The baby-faced blonde spider looked serious. He manifested Bandit's secret, the version shared with Curlo, in his left hand, flipped to a page, crouched, then pressed his right palm to the ground. The earth rippled like waves. Wolves lost their footing and collapsed en masse. Curlo immediately summoned his incredible big cloak, leapt forward, and sucked the entire wolf pack, including the alpha, into it, shrinking it down to a candy-sized pouch. He tucked it away. "You all right?" he asked the now weakened Knight. "I'm fine," said Knight. Compared to full self-control, this wasn't so draining. "What about you? That surge of aura must have been hard to bear." "It was, a bit," said Curlo. "But if you time the borrowing perfectly and release it immediately, it minimizes the strain." "So we just need to improve our timing," Knight noted. It meant perfecting their synchronicity, knowing when and how much Nen to share, to avoid overload or collapse. "Hey," Curlo gave a faint smile. "This place isn't worth staying in now. Let's move to the forest outside Andonuble." Knight laughed. "You already bagged the wolves, what else is there?" He slung an arm around Curlo's shoulder. "Hey, Curlo, since we're free today, want to grab a drink in a nearby city?" "You think so too, Knight?" Curlo smirked. "There's a town just a few kilometers out. Let's race there, winner gets to choose the position later." Neither liked losing. Even in intimacy, the question of top or bottom became a contest. But they were too evenly matched, battles would drag on endlessly and ruin the mood. So they used bets to decide. "All right, but no teleportation," Knight warned. He knew Curlo had a teleport skill and Bandit's secret. Curlo nodded. "Fine. Let's start." He darted off instantly. "What a cheat," Knight laughed and chased after him. Their speeds were near equal, hard to say who would win. "Knight, I win." Curlo's hair was tousled from the wind. The cross on his forehead peeked from beneath his bangs. His dark eyes gleamed mischievously, and his boyish grin was smug. "You cheated. I was clearly ahead," Knight argued. Curlo had suddenly stared off as if he spotted danger, prompting Knight to look away, and that hesitation let Curlo surge forward. "Knight, all's fair in war." Curlo raised an eyebrow. Nen wasn't allowed, but feints weren't banned. He won because Knight was too focused on him. Isn't manipulation fair in battle? "Fine, fine," Knight rolled his eyes. "You win this time. But I'll get even. Let's find food." He led the way into Andonuble. Andonuble, the bounty city, was likely the most populous city on Greed Island. Many tasks were issued here, drawing crowds. As they strolled through the busy streets, Knight checked bounty boards and explained to Krilo which cards were designated, which were practical, and which were just fun. Krilo suddenly eyed a nearby candy shop. Knight followed his gaze. A silver-haired boy stood at the counter, holding a gift-wrapped box of sweets, smiling like a content cat. Sensing their gaze, the boy turned. Upon seeing them, his expression turned alert, cold and wary. He saw us, Krilo. Knight smiled. Shall we say hi? His brother's in the troop now, after all. Without waiting, he approached. Hey, kid. We meet again. Killua's back broke into a cold sweat. Chapter 95 The spider slowly walked over. Though his strength was unclear, the black-haired man behind him, leader of the phantom troop, was unmistakable. Killua didn't know what had happened, as neither Illumi nor the other members of the Zoldyck family had informed him, including Kalito joining the troop. Since entering the game, Killua's ability had improved significantly under Bisky's training, but facing the phantom troop's leader, he couldn't even guarantee his escape, let alone a victory. What are you going to do? Killua asked, cold sweat forming. He just hoped Gon wouldn't show up now. Knight, you scared him. Krilo placed a hand on Knight's right shoulder, stepped forward, and stood beside him, calm. How could that be? I was super friendly. Knight huffed in confusion. Krilo turned to Killua. Kalito Zoldyck is now number 4. The silver-haired boy's pupils shrank in shock. Knight added, so, we're now allied with the Zoldyck family. You don't have to worry, we won't do anything to you. Killua didn't respond. After a moment, Krilo said, Knight, didn't you want to find a place to drink? Let's go. Right, I remember a good restaurant nearby. Great food, let's go. Knight walked off cheerfully. Wait. Killua called out. Krilo stopped. Knight turned around. What is it? I want to ask. Killua clenched his fists, veins bulging. Kalito, why did he join the phantom troop? You want to know? Krilo chuckled, still not turning around. Knight laughed and replied, future head of the Zoldyck family, I think your big brother Illumi Zoldyck, eldest son of the family, can explain it better than us. With that, they vanished down an alley. Killua. A boy with spiky hair ran over. There you are. Bisky found the quest clue and asked us to come. What's wrong with you? You look pale. It's nothing, let's go, Gon. Killua forced a smile and followed, but his chest felt heavy. That man, the leader of the phantom troop, was he telling the truth? No. He must be lying. Killua thought so and followed Gon in another direction. After tormenting the giants in Cyclops Forest for several days, the cooperation between Knight and Krilo reached about 90%. Sometimes, even without looking at signals or gestures, they instinctively synchronized. Perhaps that was a hidden trait of common origin. On the final day, Knight discovered the Cyclops' weakness and killed the sparring partner he'd used for days. Fortunately, Krilo had no interest in the grotesque, flawed beast and didn't try to capture it. It's done. Where to next? Knight asked as Krilo returned from a walk through the jungle. I found a hot spring in the woods. Let's stay there tonight, the black-haired man said. Hot spring? Knight raised an eyebrow. 2 hours later, Krilo and Knight were soaking in the steamy spring. We searched this jungle many times before, never saw a hot spring, Knight said, reclining lazily on a smooth rock, eyes half closed. I think it only appears under certain conditions, Krilo replied, his body submerged in the warm water, clearly relaxed. You mean it's a specific card? Knight asked, lifting his slightly bruised arm. Suddenly, he turned his back. Can you check if the spider tattoo on my waist is still there? Huh? The blonde youth's sweet-toned skin looked smoother. The number 6 spider tattoo on his lower back had vanished. Krilo leaned closer and touched it. It didn't feel like ink at all, it was smooth and flawless. "Hey, Krilo, where are your hands?" Knight barked in protest. Krilo withdrew his hand with a slight pout. "I just wanted to confirm. There was a bite mark here 2 days ago. Looks like it's gone." "Bite mark? Krilo, what are you implying? I don't leave marks on you." Knight glared. "So the tattoo's really gone?" "Yeah, must be pocket card number 4, Skin Beauty Spa. It removes all skin blemishes. My tattoo's probably gone too." Krilo smirked. "So, Knight, what number should I get now?" "There are only 0 and 6. Which do you want?" Knight teased. Krilo narrowed his eyes slightly. This wasn't just about numbers, it was about status in the Phantom Troop. Number 0 was the leader, number 6 was a regular member. But Knight had offered the choice to him. "Hey, I'm not changing my number, Knight." He picked number 0. Knight laughed and shrugged. "Then I won't change mine either, Captain." So what if Krilo was the leader again? He still had responsibilities to fulfill. Not only was it exhausting, but the other spiders were still unsure how to address him, whispers of Captain quieter than a mosquito's buzz, eyes avoiding Krilo's altogether. Honestly, Knight never wanted to be the leader. He just wanted to beat Krilo once. Now that was over, he didn't want to mimic Krilo, slicking his hair back and acting aloof just to be in charge. Krilo said nothing. Over the years, Knight had spent more time with him than anyone. Though always smiling, he was no hypocrite. He wore his feelings on the outside, keeping his convictions buried deep. If Knight said he no longer wanted to lead, then he truly meant it. "Oh no, my skin's all pruny," Knight yelped. "I'm getting out." He stood and strode naked toward the edge. Krilo followed, hastily pulling on clothes. "Knight, contact Maki. Tell her to bring in the other members still in Meteor City. Also, inform everyone in the game to meet at Macedora in 2 days." "Okay, Captain. On it." Knight stood at attention like a well-behaved student, then leaned over with a grin. "So you're making a move? Got a plan? Spill." Krilo gave a sly smile. "But this isn't the right mood to discuss business." He turned slightly, draped an arm around Knight's shoulders. The blonde wore only pants. His warm shoulders were smooth, his baby-faced expression turned seductive in the moonlight, and his emerald eyes sparkled like stars. Krilo couldn't resist. He leaned in, his hand moving to Knight's neck, and pulled him into a kiss. Lips met, tongues tangled. Clothes slipped from shoulders, buttons undone. Hands wandered over each other's bodies. Chapter 96 And the Secret Contest. With eyes closed, the starlight became fireworks, bursting colorfully in the midst of passionate love. The lovers embraced one another, hot bodies pressed together, colliding, yielding, crying out. Legs wrapped around a waist, hair matted with sweat, eyes glazed over with lust, breath shared from mouth to mouth. "My waist hurts so much." Knight rubbed his sore back with a pained face, grumbling as he reached for a communication card and called out Maki's name. The line connected, but silence lingered for over 10 seconds. "Maki, are you okay?" Knight asked. "Leader," came her quiet reply. "I'm fine. What do you need?" "Well, go find Uvagin and the others. Bring them into the game. If possible, head to Macedora with them. The spiders have another big job ahead." "Understood, Captain." This time, her voice was a little louder. Knight glanced at Krilo, who was standing nearby with a smirk. "Maki, it's Knight, not the leader." "You." Maki muttered in surprise. Faint sounds of other spiders making noise could be heard in the background. "What about me?" "Don't overthink it. Okay, that's enough for now." Knight ended the call. "Is it really that shocking I don't want to be the leader?" he asked Krilo, half playful, half serious. I'm so innocent. Krilo chuckled. It was because Knight always seemed harmless and easygoing that everyone had been surprised by his calculated move. Only Krilo knew the truth. Others believed Knight forcefully took the leadership when Krilo left. Even if he gave it up now, people would still assume ulterior motives. But Knight didn't care. Neither did Krilo. That was enough. Ants time split action. However, the news Maki brought back 3 days later disrupted the Phantom Troop's activities in Greed Island. Ants? What the hell are those? Finks asked, annoyed at the interruption. The elders weren't specific, but these creatures are dangerous. They're threatening the balance in Meteor City, Maki said coolly. Uvogin and the others are interested. They've already gone to investigate. So what, they want us to handle it? Shizuku asked, sitting on a step, hugging her knees. I think they want the Phantom Troop to take care of the monsters, right, Captain? Knight turned toward the black-haired man leaning against a pillar. The details are unclear, but Knight's assumption is reasonable, said Krilo thoughtfully. The troop and Meteor City depend on each other. If this threat is real, we can't ignore it. But first, I need more intel to assess the situation. Knight. Captain. You need me? The blonde spider grinned, his eyes alight with excitement and determination. Rather than waste time collecting mostly useless game cards, it was better to investigate this spider-like threat. I want you to gather information on these ants, how much damage they've done to Meteor City. I'll wrap up our operations in Greed Island and contact you once I'm out, said Krilo. Okay. But I want to take Pakinoda and Phaeton with me. Krilo nodded. Fine, but remember, safety first. Huh? Why would he say that? Knight narrowed his eyes at Krilo, but warmth rose quietly in his chest. Split action arc begins as soon as Knight returned to his apartment. He turned on his computer and began searching for information on the ants. Nothing. He logged into the Hunter Association's website with his 1-star hunter license ID, but all he found were scattered reports from other hunters, no concrete data. There was no official statement from the Hunter Association. Phaeton, return to Meteor City and meet up with Uvogin and the others. Get more details. Pakinoda, go with him. I'm heading to NGL. All the recent monster activity seems to originate there. The short spider grunted in reply, but Pakinoda hesitated. Knight, I heard that country bans high-tech devices, and most of its forests are filled with poisonous bugs and animals. Are you really going alone? Knight's eyes sparkled. Don't worry. I'm just gathering intel, I won't do anything reckless. And about the no cell phone rule? Ha ha. He narrowed his eyes, grinning. I'll find a way to contact you. Okay, let's split up. It's said that the Phantom Troop shows up in the Ant Arc to kill the Queen after returning to Meteor City. However, there's not much explained about how Krilo got his Nen removed or what happened with other members. So, I think there's a lot of narrative room here. I know many fanfics throw the troop into the Ant Arc, but personally, why would they go to NGL just for fun? They're bandits, not humanitarian heroes. The Hunter Association barely sent any people. Though, maybe Togashi hadn't worked out that part yet. They returned to Meteor City because it's home. I doubt the spiders care much about anything else. So this fic won't spend too long on that arc, we'll be heading into the Dark Continent soon. Sorry for rambling again, hee. Thanks for reading. From an ecological standpoint, NGL was likely the most heavily forested country in the world. Forests covered nearly 2/3 of its land. Many areas were protected heritage zones. Its biodiversity was unmatched. But politically, the country was a mess. The monarchy was inherited, the government isolated, and foreign travel heavily restricted. Even worse, high-tech items were banned from entry. One might expect such an outdated empire to be annexed by neighboring countries long ago. But its harsh terrain, poor resources, and strategic insignificance meant no nation wanted it. Still, NGL, with under 1 million residents, was frequently in turmoil. The young king had little power, and various ministers fought each other while neglecting governance. So when monster attacks were first reported, no one cared. Only when the attacks neared the capital did a minister finally push for resistance, and appeal for aid. One letter was sent to the Hunter Association. Knight entered NGL with an association investigation team, posing as Relic Hunter Vanague. For convenience, he joined not the Alien Creature Research Unit, but a group studying NGL's historical sites. This gave him more freedom while staying with the team. Vanague, I heard there aren't any valuable ruins in NGL. What brings you here? Asked Devlip, the team leader, a seasoned magical beast hunter with a knack for biology. Knight, in his Vanague persona, smiled. I'm just curious. A country still run by monarchy is rare. But they're so secretive. Since they finally asked the Hunter Association for help, I figured it was worth tagging along. Chapter 97 - I can take this opportunity to ask for access to their country's library. It wouldn't be so easy at other times. That's true, Devlip nodded. Let's hope this mission goes smoothly. But I've got a strange feeling I can't shake. He looked at Knight. Brother, if things go south, we're counting on you. We'll see. It might not even be a dangerous creature. Knight smiled easily, though inwardly he grew more alert. Too little information was coming from the incident sites. Even the Hunter Association's dedicated investigation team had no solid intel. That likely meant no survivors had returned to share details. Though he suspected this, he didn't let it show. He casually chatted with Devlip, using the moment to discreetly install a control chip on him. A few days later, the investigation team entered the NGL autonomous country, completed negotiations with local ministers, and granted Knight's request. Devlip, a bit of a workaholic, quickly took a few companions and rushed to the front lines to investigate the stationed troops. Knight watched him dash off and smiled faintly. A puppet that moves on its own is much more useful than one you have to control manually, especially in key moments. It had been a month since Krollo left Greed Island. In that time, he conducted extensive experiments on how to extract items from the game. Tangible items like the panda robot and the palm mermaid could be brought out via Nen, just like Krollo's incredible big cloak or Shizuku's vacuum. But functional cards like Breath of Archangel could only be retained upon full game completion. So Krollo stayed in the game longer and asked Shizuku, who hadn't yet cleared it, to collect all materializable props and bring them later. As a Nen-created world, Greed Island couldn't communicate externally. Still, Krollo frowned as his phone kept showing call failures. Suspicious, he dialed Pakinoda, a cautious and meticulous member. Captain? Pakinoda answered quickly. Pakinoda, where are you? Krollo asked. Phaeton, Yuvagan, Nobunaga, and I are in Meteor City. We've helped the elders repel the monsters several times, but there are too many. And since terms with the elders haven't been settled, we haven't gone all out. Captain, you? Just the 4 of them. Where's Knight? Krollo asked. Knight. He should still be in NGL. We parted ways after leaving Greed Island, Pakinoda said after a slight hesitation. But he's been checking in with me every couple days, always using a different number. Is that so? Krollo thought. Why would Knight go to that wilderness? He never does anything without purpose, it must be related to the Elder's distress call. Multiple thoughts raced through his mind. I'll be back in Meteor City soon. Head back to base and rest. I'll negotiate with the Council of Elders, Krollo ordered. Yes, Captain, Pakinoda replied. Krollo immediately contacted several elders and arranged to meet in District 1 in 3 days. He then returned to Meteor City with the rest of the spiders. Base. Krollo sat on the sofa in the center of the base, listening to Pakinoda recount recent events. Hands clasped over his knees, his gaze was distant, it was hard to tell whether he was truly listening. The spiders exchanged uneasy glances, but none dared question him aloud. "That's all the information, Captain," Pakanoda said. Seeing his blank expression, she repeated, "Captain? Oh? So the Council of Elders has lost over half its strength and can't take another hit?" Krilo asked softly, his eyes still fixed on his hands. The somber tone made everyone tense. "Why, yes," Pakanoda answered hesitantly. "Well then, what are we waiting for?" Krilo raised his head, dark eyes brimming with pressure. "Tomorrow, I'll visit those old foxes in District 1. Phaeton, Nobunaga, Uvagin, Finks, Shizuku, and Maki, head to District 3, the most heavily attacked by ants. Eliminate all the alien creatures there. Only District 3. The rest, come with me." "Yes." Ring, 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 Pakanoda's phone buzzed. She answered, then quickly handed it to Krilo. "Captain, it's night." Krilo's eyelid twitched. He took the phone and heard that familiar, cheerful voice, "I figured you'd be done with the game by now, Krilo." "Hey. Knight, have you been? Done with your adventure in NGL?" Krilo asked, his voice laced with ambiguous warmth. "Yup, I've got all the info I need. No reason to stay," Knight replied. "I uploaded it to the usual email, password hasn't changed. I'll return to Meteor Street in about 5 days." "Got it. When you're back, come to District 1, Krilo said. "District 1, huh? Ready to haggle with those geezers? Got it. See ya." Click. Humph. Didn't even say anything else. "Heartless," Krilo muttered quietly. Luckily no one heard, or their eyeballs would have hit the floor. "That's all for today." He raised his voice. "Get ready. Maki, we still have that laptop in the base that connects to the net, right?" "Yes, but I think it got smashed when Uvagin and the others were messing around." "It's probably broken," the purple-haired girl answered. "I'll go grab a new one right now." A large spider shouted, dashing out. Krilo could only shake his head. The report Knight had sent was thorough. Krilo frowned as he read. The creature, Chimera ant, first appeared in northern NGL. It was horrifying. These ants could use Nen, learn quickly, and consume humans to absorb their memories and knowledge. Truly terrifying. But Knight is right, we don't need to join the fight in NGL. Knight had spent about a month there. In addition to using puppets to gather intel, he also fought the ants directly to gauge their strength. Since NGL was ground zero for the outbreak, conditions there were worse than in Meteor City. After the first scouting reports came in, the Hunter Association dispatched small teams to hold the front lines. At this point, Knight's intel was more or less complete. Chapter 98 didn't exist, so time for your legally required cult break before the next chapter so the gods doesn't get mad and strike us down. Now let's keep going. Chapter 99 The blonde spider shook his head. In my opinion, if Pariston really retaliated now, his approval rating would plummet. A clever man like him wouldn't do something so stupid. Sure enough, Pariston first declared that his top priority as president would be rescuing Gon. Then, in the next breath, he shifted to discussing the 3 essential qualities for the Hunter Association president: strength, qualifications, and magnanimity. He jokingly claimed to lack all 3, yet nominated Cheadle, the candidate with the lowest support. Knight tilted his head and whispered in Krilo's ear, "He's trying to misdirect everyone's focus." "True, but I think he's already won," Krilo replied. Unexpected results. The next vote concluded with Leorio leading again, but he and Pariston still had to face off one final time. Pariston went first. "Mr. Leorio, can you repeat your plan if elected Hunter Association president?" Leorio responded impatiently, "Obviously, save Gon. Gather everyone." Puriston nodded with a pleasant smile. Any thoughts on staff and structural reform within the association? Nope, Leorio said. I just want to save Huan. His tone grew increasingly brusque, but Puriston maintained his smile. And do you have any questions for me, Mr. Leorio? No, no, no. Leorio almost exploded. He'd only joined the election for Huan, and now that Huan was missing, he had no patience left. Yet no one was allowed to leave until the results were finalized. Thank you for your answers, Puriston said, and then abruptly turned to the crowd. Now, I'd like to propose 10 changes to the Hunter exam. What's he doing? Knight muttered, watching Puriston grandstand from the podium. Was he trying to curry favor for future benefits? Or? He's waiting for the right moment, Curlo replied. I don't know what exactly, but he's clearly not interested in winning this election. His sharp gaze remained fixed on Puriston, analyzing every motion. After several seconds, Curlo added, his goal isn't the presidency. Really? Knight glanced over. Curlo was far more perceptive in understanding people's motives. But if Puriston didn't want to win, then what did he want? Bang! The door to the venue burst open. Surrounded by others, a spiky-haired boy walked in. Leorio, standing at the podium, lit up. Huan. You're okay? Leorio, yeah, I'm fine now, Huan said, rubbing the back of his head with a smile. Leorio abandoned the microphone and ran over to hug Huan tightly. Most of the hunters in the room knew Huan, many had fought alongside him, so greetings and cheers quickly erupted. Still on stage, Puriston called out, Mr. Freaks, we're all happy to see you well. But please, can we hold off on the reunion until the election finishes? Election? Huan, who had been unconscious for days, was completely unaware. He turned to Leorio. What's being voted on? The next president of the Hunter Association. Leorio grumbled. I ran because of you, and now you're healed. Eh? Leorio wants to be president? Huan blinked. That didn't match his impression of Leorio at all. Yes, Mr. Huan, we're down to the final round. It's between me and Mr. Leorio. His campaign was centered on rescuing you. So, please, cast the deciding vote. Choose? Puriston smiled. Who do you think should be president, me or him? Huan was clearly confused. Don't worry, just go with your gut. Puriston encouraged. My gut? Huan pointed toward the stage. Then I vote for Mr. Puriston. The room erupted in chaos. Why would you pick Puriston? Shido blurted out. Huan scratched his head. Because Leorio's dream is to be a doctor, not a president. Everyone fell silent. Huan had ended it all with a single innocent sentence. What a twist, Curlo commented as Puriston was officially declared the new Hunter Association president. He probably predicted this outcome, didn't he, Knight? Yeah, he really knows how to manipulate a crowd, Knight nodded. We'll need to be cautious around him. As the commotion died down, Puriston returned to the stage and made his first announcement, I appoint Miss Cheadle as vice president. Also, I hereby resign from the presidency. The hall exploded into even greater chaos. Puriston looked completely relaxed as he bowed and walked away, leaving behind a massive mess. The stunned election committee exchanged bewildered glances. Is that really how it ends? Knight heard Curlo laugh softly. Let's go meet him. Even if waiting for opportunity beneath a tree is a foolish proverb, sometimes it works. And right now, the man in the vertically striped suit approaching them was none other than Puriston Hill, newly appointed vice president, and former president for all of 5 minutes. Are you two waiting for me? You seem like strangers. But remarkable ones, Puriston said cheerfully. As he spoke, he was mentally assessing their strength. He definitely couldn't take on both at once. Well, Mr. Hill, I just wanted to thank you for the performance. Krolo stood with hands in his pockets, smiling mildly. I'm not sure I follow. Periston feigned ignorance. What do I mean? Krolo smiled thinly. Let's just say I'm looking forward to the future. If the opportunity arises, I'd love to have a drink with you. But, what a shame. Let's go, knight. Wait, sir, may I ask your name? Periston called as they walked past. His instincts screamed that these two were potential threats. But if he didn't even know their names? The black-haired spider half-turned and replied coldly, My name is Krolo Lucifer. Though this is our first meeting, I've known of you for a long time, Mr. Hill. Periston's cheerful demeanor faltered for an instant. Krolo Lucifer, he knew that name well. A key figure in the criminal underworld. Still, his eyes glinted with excitement. Facing such an opponent would surely make things interesting. Mr. Lucifer, Periston exclaimed, as if recognizing a celebrity. I never imagined we'd meet like this. I thought your group had no ties to the Hunter Association. Was that a jab? Suggesting Krolo shouldn't even be present? But Krolo's expression remained cold. Mr. Hill, I don't believe this concerns you. Besides, I simply came to greet the man who gave me such a brilliant performance. A clear message, Periston, no longer president, had no say over the Phantom Troop. Chapter 100 It had been a month since Krolo left Greed Island. During that time, he conducted extensive experiments on how to bring items out of the game. Physical telekinetic constructs, like the panda robot or the palm mermaid, could be materialized and brought outside, just like Krolo's incredible big cloak or Shizuku's vacuum, but functional cards, such as Breath of Archangel, could only be obtained by actually completing the game. So Krolo remained in the game until the end and entrusted Shizuku, who hadn't finished, with gathering all materializable props for retrieval later. As a Nen-created world, Greed Island lacked external communication. However, Krolo noticed his phone repeatedly showing failed call attempts and frowned. What were they doing? He quickly dialed Pakinoda, the careful and detail-oriented member. Hello, is this the captain? Pakinoda answered swiftly. Pakinoda, where are you? Krolo asked. Phaeton, Yuvagan, Nobunaga, and I are in Meteor City, Pakinoda explained. We've helped the Council of Elders repel those creatures several times, but there are too many, and terms haven't been finalized, so we haven't gone all out. Captain, you? Just the four of them. What about Knight? Krolo asked. Knight. He should still be in NGL. We separated after leaving Greed Island, Pakinoda replied after a brief hesitation. But he's checked in with me every 2-3 days, always from a different number. Is that so? Krolo thought. Why would Knight go alone into the wild NGL autonomous country? He never does anything pointless. This must be related to the Council of Elders' request. Multiple thoughts swirling, Krolo ordered, I'll return to Meteor City soon. You all head back to base and rest. I'll negotiate with the Council of Elders. Yes, Captain. Pakinoda replied. Krolo immediately called several elders and scheduled a meeting for District 1 in 3 days. He then returned to Meteor City with the spiders. Base. Krolo sat in the center of the base, listening to Pakinoda's summary of recent events. Hands clasped over his knees, his gaze was distant, it was hard to tell if he was actually listening. The others exchanged uneasy looks, but no one dared speak. That's all the intelligence, Captain, Pakinoda finished. Seeing his blank expression, she repeated it. Oh? So the Council of Elders has already lost over half its strength, and they can't take another strike? Krolo asked calmly, eyes still fixed on his hands. His quiet inquiry heightened tension. Why yes, Pakinoda stammered. Then what are we waiting for? Krolo raised his head, the shadows of the world in his eyes. Tomorrow, I'll negotiate with those old foxes in District 1. Phaeton, Nobunaga, Uvagen, Finks, Shizuku, Maki, head to District 3, the worst hit by the Chimera ants. Kill every one of those creatures there. Only District 3. The rest of you, come with me. Yes. Ring, 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 Pakanota's phone buzzed. She answered quickly, then handed it to Krilo. Captain, it's Knight. Krilo's eyelid twitched as he took the phone. The familiar, hearty voice came through. I guessed you'd finished the game by now, Krilo. Hey. Knight, how have you been? Ending your trip in the NGL autonomous country? Krilo responded, his tone containing an unreadable emotion. Yes. I gathered enough intel, no need to stay. I uploaded the data to the usual email, password hasn't changed. I'll return to Meteor City in about 5 days. Understood. When you're back, report to District 1, Krilo said. District 1, huh? You ready to negotiate with the old men? Okay, got it, bye. Click. Humph. No other comment? What a cold bastard, Krilo muttered quietly. Thankfully, only he could hear. Alright, that's enough for today, he called out. Maki, we still have that internet-enabled laptop in the base, right? Yes, but I think it got smashed during Uvagen's last sparring session. It's probably broken, the purple-haired girl replied. I'll go fetch a replacement right now. A large spider blurted, rushing out. Krilo could only shake his head. The file Knight had sent was comprehensive. Krilo frowned as he read it. The creature, Chimera ant, first appeared in northern NGL. It was terrifying. They could use Nen, possessed rapid learning abilities, and fed on humans, absorbing their memories and skills. Definitely terrifying. But Knight is right. The Phantom Troop doesn't need to enter a crusade in NGL. Knight had spent a month there. Using his puppet network and his own strength, he engaged the ants firsthand to gauge their capabilities. Since NGL was the origin of the invasion, its situation was far more severe than Meteor City. Once initial scouts reported back, the Hunter Association deployed small teams to hold the line. Knight's intelligence was now nearly complete. Humph, is there nothing else to say? What a heartless guy. Krilo muttered to himself. Thankfully, his voice was so soft that the other spiders might have thought they imagined it. That's all for today, he called out loudly. Everyone, get ready. Maki, didn't we have a laptop in the base with direct internet access? Yes, but I think it got broken when Uvagen and the others were sparring last time. It's probably lost now, the purple-haired spider thought for a moment before replying. I'll go grab a replacement right away. Another large spider blurted, rushing out before Krilo could finish. He just shook his head. The intelligence Knight had sent was highly detailed. Krilo frowned as he studied it. The creatures, Chimera ants, had first appeared in northern NGL. They were terrifying, capable of using Nen, possessing rapid learning, and consuming humans to absorb their memories and knowledge. Indeed horrifying, but Knight is right. We don't need to get involved in a crusade in the NGL autonomous country. Knight had stayed in NGL for about a month. Besides using his puppet network, he personally fought the ants several times to assess their strength. Since NGL was ground zero, its situation was far more serious than in Meteor City. After scouts returned their reports, the Hunter Association sent in small teams to hold the front line. Knight's intel was now nearly complete. Remaining any longer risked being drafted into the expeditionary force, so he left behind a few eyes and decisively returned. The Phantom Troop quickly coordinated with the Council of Elders and began clearing ants district by district. 2 days later, Knight returned, bearing vital news. You mean Netero has decided to go to NGL himself to confront the Ant King? Is that reliable? Krilo asked, frowning. It's almost certain, Knight replied, dusting off his coat from the journey. The Ant King is incredibly powerful. I haven't seen him, but one of my eyes died at his hands. That tells you that ordinary Nen users pose no threat to him. That old fool actually went himself. Knight, what do you think will happen? Knight snorted. Captain Krilo, I think it's time we may need to meet Killua and Jing. Oh? You don't trust Netero? Haha, I understand, it's going to get chaotic again. Krilo walked slowly and stopped by a window, hands in his coat pockets, gazing at the chaotic streets of District 1 in Meteor City. Those not like us are never straightforward. No matter how wild the Chimera ants are, they will fade, but the struggle of humanity never ends. Even if the world is in turmoil, it's none of our business, right? Knight smiled and leaned against Krilo's shoulder. Captain, we're not exactly noble people. That's true, Knight. Krilo lifted a small smile, wrapping his arm around the blonde spider.